Great. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the West Grey Council meeting for October 5th, 2021. On the call to order, all members of council are present and there is a quorum. Supervisor Hewlett, would you please go through the features of today's electronic meeting, please?
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Before I begin, if you get disconnected at any time, you can dial 647-558-0588 and enter the meeting ID for this meeting, which is 831-6959-0883. Both members of council and staff have been briefed on the various features of the Zoom meeting software and will be raising their hands physically on camera to speak. For members of the public, if you require any technical assistance throughout the meeting, you can send a chat message to myself, Cody Hewlett, Corporate and Community Initiatives Officer, and I will attempt to assist you. It should be noted for members of the public that this meeting is being held on Zoom, but it is also being live streamed on YouTube. Please note that live participation is not being monitored on YouTube and must be done through the Zoom meeting platform. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Hewlett. And now we'll move on to item number 2, moment of reflection. So for members of council, staff, and citizens listening in, if you care at this point, if you care to rather, please take a quiet moment of reflection. Thank you. Item number 3, declarations of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Members of council, at this time, is there anything to declare? Seeing none, on to item number 4, and that is delegations presentations. 4.1, presentation, Tony Comissio, Intact Public Entities, Municipal Insurance. And with that, Tony Comissio, welcome. And just to let you know, we do have the information of the slide deck contained in our agenda. And we're looking forward to your presentation at this time. Tony, you are on mute. So we'll be most anxious to hear everything you've said up until this point.
And good morning. Yes, it's been that kind of morning.
Indeed.
It's, yeah. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor and Council, for this opportunity to address you today. For those of you I haven't met in person, my name is Tony Comissio. I work for Intact Public Entities, formerly known as Frank Cowan Company. Our company's been in business for 90 years, specifically providing insurance programs for municipalities and other public entities. Intact Insurance purchased Frank Cowan Company in 2019. So while we are currently in the middle of a rebrand, our logo and name has officially changed. And before we get to the main topic today, I just wanted everybody on council to know that while we do have a new owner, our fundamental product and services that we've always provided to municipalities has not changed. Municipal insurance is still our bread and butter. We still have the same management team as before the purchase, and Intact has actually added 19 new employees since 2019. So I think this is very important for everyone to know, because with so much change happening in our lives, when it comes to your insurance, it's still the same team of people helping you and your staff that have been accustomed to dealing with over the years. Today's topic that we're here to address council is on risk management. This is a value-added service that is automatically included with your overall insurance program. This particular session may be a refresher for some of you on council. You may have heard us speak to it before at some of those in-person seminars we used to do when we used to have municipal conferences. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with them. If not, I hope it's educational at the very least. So today from our risk management team, we have Tracy Iso. She is our risk assessment and solutions manager, AKA I call her our professional problem solver. And I was very lucky to test Tracy's wealth of insurance and claims experience early in her career with us, as I personally had to throw her some very odd curveballs with some interesting inquiries I've had from municipalities over the years. But without taking any more of Tracy's time, please everyone welcome Tracy as she'll be speaking on today's topic. So thank you.
Thank you, and good morning, Tracy, and welcome. We look forward to the presentation.
Good morning, Your Worship and fellow councillors. Thank you very much for having us here this morning, bright and early. I'm hoping I can, the host has disabled my screen sharing, so I'm hoping that the host can enable that so that I don't have to do next screen, please, but I'll leave that in your hopefully capable hands. Not yet. So today we're going to talk about things that can happen, because they do, and that what we've seen, and I'm sorry, I'm just messing with the tech. There you go. Sorry, there we go. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, Tracy, everything is grand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Again, I think the host is just got to enable me to share my screen, and then it'll switch over to my presentation.
Well, let's just connect with Supervisor Hewlett. Please go ahead, Supervisor.
If I may, we will be doing the screen share on our end. So if you could just direct me when.
Oh, okay. All right. So we'll just
move ahead then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So as I'm sure most of you are aware, when bad things happen, and they do, oftentimes counselors are the first. And I apologize again. This is not. We should have rehearsed this, I suppose. Hold on just one sec here. Here we go. Okay, so when bad things happen in your area, oftentimes as elected officials, you're often the first point of contact for citizens in distress, as I'm sure you're all well aware. The purpose of our presentation today is to kind of help prepare you for that, and how to provide some advice for municipal officials, as well as managers and staff, as to how you deal with vulnerable people facing disaster, and that should be in sync with your own municipal and provincial government messaging. That messaging should be understood, approved, and agreed upon by council ahead of any incident or occurrence. So you really want to kind of get a plan in place before anything bad happens. You want to be able to have that prepped and ready. Next slide, please. Remember that in an emergency, people are frantic for relief, and possibly most of all, guidance. So typically when an agitated constituent calls, we see that the temptation for an elected official or even a city manager is to try to solve their problem right away. And though that's understandable and of course it's admirable, it's not always the best course of action in every circumstance. And there are going to be different circumstances, but in a general sense, you want to have something prepared at a municipal level as to how you're going to communicate with constituents as an elected council member. Importantly, again, those communications should be aligned with provincial or municipal messaging. This is not the time to go off script. West Grey's municipal office will already have, hopefully, procedures in place to handle incidents from sewer backup claims to severe injuries to auto accidents. And those procedures should be baked into what you do on a daily basis and will comply with agreements already in place. That could mean different things depending on whether it's a property damage claim or a slip and fall accident. And municipal staff will be familiar with what they'll do to ensure that the claim, if there is going to be one that will go to insurance, is dealt with in accordance with existing insurance and West Grey's policies and procedures. But you still, as a human being, you want to be able to help. So what can you do? Depending on, or next slide, please. Depending on the situation, it could make sense to take notes of the call if it is a phone call. And we recommend that you, if possible, date and time those notes. And it can be difficult if you're at the site of an accident, clearly, but if you're comfortable doing so, make notes. We don't want you to, we recommend that you date and time the notes, pardon me, and remember that this is not a time to be subjective or make judgments. When you're making notes, it's important that you that you record just the facts, what you're being told. If there's somebody who's very upset, you can note that they appear to be very upset. You can write that down, that they're crying. If they're using profanity, you can write that down. But what we want to do in an emergency situation is just take down the facts and remove subjectivity. Just record what you see and hear with photos from your phone, if it's appropriate, again, depending on the situation. If you're able to and wish to, you could record the conversation, but if you're going to do that, you should ask the person and confirm that they're amenable to having it recorded. It could be admittedly awkward. And I'm not sure if, sorry, again, the tech is not. Yeah, so you want to be able to ask them permission first ahead of time. And you might find that sometimes it really is going to be on a situation dependent basis. Might lower the level of profanity in some situations. It depends on how it's presented. And that, again, is going to be on a case by case basis. Of course, that assumes that you have and know how to operate the technology. If the call is to be recorded, they may have the right to a copy of that recording as well. So be aware that there are pros and cons in doing so. Importantly, you want to try to listen to what they're saying. And I think so often we're in such a scurry to help people that we forget to just sit and listen to what they're saying and listen to what they need. And it's important to show empathy without offering solutions that you might not be able to deliver. We recommend that you do not admit any fault, because fault's never been determined. Fault is something that has to be determined after a fulsome investigation. And you do everybody a disservice if you just say, oh yes, this is all our fault, we're going to move forward with this, when you really don't know necessarily the backstory of the whole situation. At the end of the day, and it's always recommended that the constituent, if they're facing damage to their property, notify their own insurer first. Now, speaking from experience in the claims department, I can guarantee you will possibly face pushback on this. But at the end of the day, it's always recommended that homeowners make that call first. And sometimes that's a bitter pill for them to swallow, but you can let them know that you will report the issue to the appropriate party in the municipal office, but that ultimately their insurer is there for them. And if there is responsibility that's going to be determined against West Grey or the municipality in any way, then it'll get sorted out between different insurance adjusters, not between you and the homeowner. So it's a really important thing to understand and be able to convey to them. Next slide, please. Feeling responsible or having empathy for your constituents is absolutely appropriate. It makes you human, it makes you good at what you do, but care has to be taken to ensure that doesn't equal legal liability. Again, we can empathize with the terrible situation, and we do, but we can request that staff action a formal response to aid the homeowner or citizens where we can, but care has to be taken. Taking responsibility as a knee-jerk emotional response before a full investigation can be done should be avoided at all costs. Also, a negative approach can be combative. So I've seen situations where city staff or even council members could kind of get combative with the person saying, well, this isn't our fault. And that's not necessarily the right response either. So it's kind of what you want to kind of approach is being that nice, neutral, empathetic middle ground. Focus on what you can do rather than what you don't really know. Focus on the fact that I can gather some information from you now and ensure it goes to the right person to action this appropriately. You may not wish to provide your private contact information. That's certainly your own personal judgment. Formal contact streams should be adhered to for the sake of proper documentation, if nothing else. So next slide, please. Typically, auto accidents, I'm going to talk a little bit about auto, just because it's something that even outside of your purview as a council member, you hopefully haven't, but you may have experienced. They're very common. And just wanted to provide some tips that we can give you when you're at the scene of an accident. Typically, by and large, most auto accidents are fender benders that don't require the police, let alone an insurance adjuster, thank goodness. But regardless of what's happening on the ground and what's said, witness information is invaluable. And that goes for anybody that's listening to this call today. I can't stress this enough. If you get in an accident, any accident, look around you and get witness contact information, name and phone number, email if possible. Also, as a helpful tool to other people, if you are a witness to an accident, be a good neighbor and give your name and phone number to any involved drivers, just to be able to sort that out. Next slide, please. Now, there's a whole bunch of signs here, and this is witnesses, just to kind of bring home the point about witnesses. Witnesses could make a difference to the financial outcome of accidents. In British Columbia, for instance, you see these signs everywhere indicating that in the heat of the moment, witness information was not obtained. And it makes a huge difference to the outcome of a claim. And the reason why that is, and especially in Ontario, I'm just going to go off script a little bit here, just to kind of, Ontario auto is what we call no fault, for those of you who don't know, which is kind of a little bit of a misnomer, because fault is very, very important, but it means you go to your own insurance company to have your vehicle repaired in the event of an accident, which is totally fine. It's a great system, a great regime, but fault is very, very important, because having an at-fault accident rated against you on your personal lines policy can be very, 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 very impactful to your premiums every year. So the first thing you want to be able to do is make sure that there are witnesses there to be able to attest to the fact that the other person did cross into your lane, or the other person did hit you, because when you're just left with the he said, or she said, the adjusters tend to go 50-50. And when you go in a 50-50 accident, it means that both of you are getting ascribed fault. So it's not a good thing. We always recommend, first things first, always get witness information. And even frankly, if you are at fault for the accident, it's good to have that information to move the claim forward so that things don't get stuck. I'm just going to look over my notes here. Oh, and remember one last piece. Passengers in vehicles are not witnesses. Their accounts have little, if any, weight for fault determination. And again, in Ontario, fault determination is very, very important. So again, we recommend it just first, even if you want to put a little, if you've got one of those little cards in your glove box, I'm sure everybody still has them. If you don't have a mobile app, which would even be better. But yeah, even if it's take down some witness information at the scene. Next slide, please. Here is, you'll see, this is just basically an illustration of what a typical accident report looks like. It's intended to act as a guide to a frazzled driver who's experienced a collision. Now this goes for, and I'm just going to stop for a minute. This goes for in the commercial context as well as the personal lines. And in Ontario, that's very much two different animals. So you're going to have commercial fleet vehicles or commercial vehicles that are insured by the municipality, but you've also got your own personal vehicles. So this is kind of advice that goes to all of those. But in the commercial context, these kind of accident reports are very important, because sadly, when an accident happens involving a heavy piece of equipment or whatever, you're going to have injuries. So, you're not always, but there tends to be injuries. So they have to be treated a little differently insofar as recording what's happening at the scene. Again, these are they're intended to act as a guide to a frazzled driver who's experienced a collision. And technology in the presence of cell phones might have changed the consideration of these forms. So we used to always have these things in our glove box, but as I say, now people rely on our handy dandy cell phones instead. Typically, what is an adjuster, what we want to see is a photo of the driver's license of the third party that was in the accident, taken with your cell phone, as well as a copy of their insurance pink card. So for time saving, it might be better to have those 2 items and photos of the accident and the damage. And then photos, of course, of any witness information. So somebody gives you a business card, if they still even make those anymore, get a picture of that. And then that way it can all be sent to your insurance provider in the event that the accident is going to go to insurance. For the city managers or the municipal managers that are here with us today, in a commercial vehicle context, the accident reporting form should direct the driver who they should contact in the event their vehicle is not drivable. I'm sure that many of you have seen on the news the issues with tow truck drivers and things like that. So you might have pre-approved contracts in place. So that needs to be baked into a kind of on the scene document. It should provide guidance to obtain witness email information. And then one of the concerns that we've seen in claims in the past is that, and not necessarily in a commercial context, but or in a municipal context, but there's a possibility that the vehicle is going to get towed away and then any potential dash cam footage might be lost. Dash cams are something that are kind of coming to the fore very quickly and certainly are invaluable evidence gathering things, but they have problems if they're not necessarily, if the information isn't taken off the camera. So just recognize that and bake that into your procedure. The other thing is if there are injuries, things to consider are if there's CCTV footage from neighboring premises. It's something that we don't really think about, but again, when we're looking for witnesses, especially if there's just 2 people on the side of the road and it is going to be an argument as to whose fault it was, something for you to consider. Filling out these lengthy forms is not something that it's not high on my list of recommendations because it very seldom gets done properly in the scene of a stressful situation on the side of the road. But one invaluable part of the form that I do recommend is a diagram. And you can see that here just with the intersection, if it is, and don't forget your ordinals of north, south, east, and west. Those pictures are great, but a diagram really goes a long way to help the adjuster figure out what actually happened on the side of the road. Mm-hmm. So ideally, the document should provide direction to the driver of the vehicle. And depending on the type of vehicle, there's going to be different safety requirements that have to be met in the event of an accident. For instance, is the truck carrying a hazardous load that will dictate what they should do and how to do it. So they're in compliance with environmental legislation. So there is some other legislation that kind of comes into play here. And those types of considerations ought to be baked into that procedural document. Next slide, please. So municipalities are in a sticky situation, as I'm sure you're all aware. Individual citizens can and do go to the media at times to make their case. But as you know, as municipal representatives, you're precluded by privacy laws to discuss the cases on a public forum to defend your actions directly. I know I would really struggle with that, but it's something that happens. So optics are important here, but the best strategy is to advise, again, that the matter is being addressed and that it has been referred to the right department for investigation. Clearly, you cannot interfere with that investigation. Built within your insurance policy that you have with Intact Public Entities or any other insurer you may have, there are going to be certain terms and conditions that compel you, the insured, to cooperate with the insurer's investigation. That includes not admitting fault and not attempting any type of settlement with third parties on your own. So it comes back to that. Don't make promises that you can't deliver on. It's best to just say that it's going to be investigated. If you do that, it could disable the insurer from carrying out a full investigation and can inhibit their ability to negotiate a final settlement with the claimant if that is the way things are going to happen. One of my mandates is to assist our clients to create an action plan in the event of an emergency or a catastrophe. It's kind of my raison d'etre. It's one of my favorite things is to work with municipalities to say, okay, what do you do when you're in the middle of a disaster? How do you communicate with your constituents? We encourage you to put a plan in place that all staff members are familiar with, that can include assigning a staff member to deal with citizens and media specifically. But remember that that person should have a backup. In the event of an emergency, your first contact probably will not be available because that's Murphy's Law and that's the way things go. Have a plan in place and practice it for all different situations: storms, floods, power outages, and hate to say it, but even a cyber breach. Ultimately, as representatives of West Grey, we recommend that you show your compassion, and I wouldn't imagine you would do anything less than that, but help direct their claim to the appropriate department where possible. And you can even follow up if you need to with appropriate department, but be aware that the way in which you communicate with the public has a real impact. And that's the end of my short presentation. Next slide, please. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the detail in your presentation, Tracy. Miso, very much appreciated. Are there any questions of clarity from members of council? And thank you for putting the gallery screen on. I am not seeing any questions at this point. So I would like to thank both Tony Camisio and Tracy Miso for attending our meeting and providing us with the information in the presentation, and look forward to another time when you're before council. Thank you, and take care.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you.
Members of council, we're moving on to item number 5 at this point. This is public meetings. We do have another agenda with us, but before we go into that, Clerk Charbet, could you please read the recommendation at hand?
Through you, Mayor, the recommendation is that council does now adjourn to proceed into a public meeting pursuant to section 34 of the Planning Act.
Is there a mover for this motion? I see Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, and is there a seconder? Councillor Townsend. Thank you very much. Any questions on the motion at hand? All those in favor indicate with a raised hand then. 7 members of council have voted in favor of this motion. The motion is carried. We are now moving over to the public meeting for West Grey, October 5th, 2021. There is a separate agenda for that. On the call to order, all members of council are present, and there is a quorum for this particular meeting. Supervisor Hewlett, could you please explain the electronic features of this meeting for individuals that perhaps were not part of the early morning West Grey Council meeting? Please go ahead.
Absolutely, and thank you, Mayor Robinson. Before I begin, if you get disconnected at any point during this meeting, you can dial 647-558-0588 and enter the meeting ID for this meeting, which is 831-6959-0883. Both members of council and staff have been briefed on the various features of the Zoom meeting software and will be raising their hands physically on camera to speak. For members of the public, if you require any technical assistance throughout the duration of this meeting, you can send a chat message to myself, Cody Hewlett, Corporate and Community Initiatives Officer, and I will attempt to assist you. It should be noted for members of the public that this meeting is being held across 2 locations. It is being held on Zoom as well as being live streamed on YouTube. It should be noted that public participation is not done through YouTube. It must be done through the Zoom meeting software. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item number 2, declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof. Members of council, is there anything to declare at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 3, purpose of the meeting. Clerk Charbet, could you please identify the purpose of today's meeting?
Your Worship, the purpose of this public meeting of the Municipality of West Grey Council is to review an application for a proposed amendment to West Grey zoning bylaw number 37, 2006. And also to allow interested members of the public the opportunity to ask questions or offer comments with regard to the application. Council will not make a decision on the application at this public meeting. Based on recommendations and information received at this public meeting, an amending bylaw may be presented for approval in the regular council meeting agenda. There is a public registry located online with Recreation Supervisor Hewlett, and if any member of the public would like to be notified in writing of the decision on the application, they are to provide their name and mailing address to Mr. Hewlett via email or telephone for the registry. A person or public body may appeal the decision if they've made an oral submission at this public meeting or a written submission to council prior to the passing of the bylaw. The local planning appeal tribunal may or may not consider an appeal from a person or public body if they have not made an oral submission at this public meeting or a written submission to council prior to passing the bylaw.
Thank you, Clerk Scharbeck. Item number 4, ZA 18.2021 in brackets Brandon and Jennifer Block, end of bracket, Part Lot 1, Plan 55, Part 2, RP 16R 5433, Township of Bentic. 4.1, application for zoning amendment. On 4.2, Planner L. Spencer report. Clerk Scharbeck, could you please read the recommendation?
To you, Mayor Robinson, the recommendation is the council receives Planner Spencer's report for file ZA 18-2021 to block and the recommendation therein to approve the application.
Thank you. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder. We'll have the presentation from Planner Spencer. Any questions from members of council at that time, and then a call to the vote. So on the recommendation at hand, is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Hergert, and a seconder, Councillor Hamilton. Are there any questions on the motion? All right, then now we'll have the presentation from Planner Spencer. Good morning, and we're looking forward to your presentation at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The landowner recently purchased the subject lands with the intent to construct a single detached dwelling unit. The purpose of this application is to change the zone symbol on the subject lands from C2, being highway commercial, to A3, restricted rural, the effect of which will permit the construction of a single detached dwelling unit. The information provided by the applicant to date would indicate that the proposed dwelling unit would meet the requirements of the A3 zone. Prior to the consideration of readings to the bylaw, planning staff do recommend that the applicant provide a detailed site plan indicating the intended location of the structure on the subject lands with dimensions. The subject lands are located on the east side of Bruce Road 10 along the western limit of the municipality. They do not have a municipal address assigned to them at this time, but are legally identified as Part Lot 1, Plan 55, Registered Plan 16R 5433, Part 2 in the geographic township of Bentic. The lands are presently vacant and are approximately 1.61 hectares in size. The property is bounded to the north by commercial properties with rural properties to the east and south of the subject lands. To determine the consistency of the application, staff did conduct a review of the provincial policy statement, the county official plan, and the municipality's zoning bylaw. A detailed site plan with dimensions should be provided prior to council's consideration of the bylaw should any provisions of the A3 zone require relief. Further review should be conducted and recognized through the proposed zoning bylaw. The Planning Act does not permit the application for a minor variance for a period of 1 year following the passage of a zoning bylaw without further council approval. Planning staff further recommend that in the absence of passage of the bylaw, it should be amended to require site plan control to require the respect of record of site condition. A record of site condition is required based on the use of the potential property for being used for commercial purposes to eliminate the requirement or need to demonstrate that no further contamination of the soil has potentially been committed on the property. The applicant can provide the record of site condition as part of site plan approval, which can be in addition to the zoning bylaw, which will permit the bylaw to have its first, second, and third reading at the discretion of council. No further information is required at this time. Comments were received from the adjacent landowner to the north, Mr. Jackson, and comments were provided from the County of Grey, who only requested that we ensure servicing is provided to the site. I have no further comments at the time, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. Members of council, are there any questions? Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson, and thank you, Planner Spencer. Planner Spencer, could you elaborate on the comments received from the neighbor to the north, please? Thank you.
Yes, I can, and thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. The proponent to the north of the property is concerned that there will be a conflict in land use. So my suggestion to mitigate those concerns would be implementing site plan control on the property with a registered site plan agreement on title. And that would acknowledge the agricultural uses that are to the south and east of the property, in addition to the commercial uses that currently exist to the north. That would serve as a warning not only to the current property owner, but also to anyone that in future, should the property be sold, they will understand that those uses exist, and there may be uses that are not considered to be compatible in terms of noise or odor, etc. Registering that on title would alleviate the concerns and prevent complaint issues between the two property owners should that occur. That's not anticipated that it will occur, but it's just a preventionary measure.
Excellent, thank you. And through you, Mayor Robinson, would part of a site plan also, would there also be for the new owners to build in some buffer, whether it be bushes or fencing or that kind of thing, to also negotiate the neighborly relationship? Thank you.
Through you, Your Worship, absolutely, that can be part of the site plan process to alleviate those concerns and provide some separation distance between the two properties, specifically to the north. There's not much buffering that can be done for agricultural uses other than screening with some trees if that's necessary, but it's more of an odor and noise issue in that respect.
Wonderful, thank you very much.
Thank you. Members of council, anything further? Councillor Herker.
Yes, can you please explain, MDS was met and there's no issue, or how are we with the minimum distance separation, please?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Your Worship. Minimum distance separation was reviewed by staff and there are no concerns. MDS is not an issue for this property. Thank you.
Members of council, anything further? Okay, then I will call the vote on the motion. All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 7 members of council have voted in favor. That motion is carried. We are now moving on to 4.3, written comments received, 4.3.1, Grey County. And at this point, when I invite Planner Spencer to speak on this, as she's already included information within her report, I will ask, has there been any further written submissions? Thank you, Planner Spencer.
Thank you. And through Your Worship, beyond the comments from the County of Grey and comments from Mr. Jackson, no other comments on this file have been received at this time.
And so no further comments from you at this time, is that correct?
That's correct, other than the suggestion for site plan control to alleviate the comments from Mr. Jackson. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk Scharbeck, I would ask you the same question. Have you received any written comments? As we all know, written comments can be received up until the time of the public meeting. Clerk Scharbeck.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. No, I have received no further comments either.
Thank you. 4.4 then, verbal comments for 4.4.1, council members. Council members, are there any comments? 4.4.2 then, public members. Supervisor Hewlett, could you please assist in providing access to any member of the public that wishes to speak on this public meeting?
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. It should be mentioned, as noted previously, that public participation for this portion of the meeting must be done through the Zoom meeting software. Public participation is not being monitored on the live stream on YouTube. For members of the public wishing to participate in this portion of the meeting, they may do so in one of 2 ways. The first being, if you have joined us using the online meeting software, you can either raise your hand, typically located in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, or send a chat message to myself, Cody Hewlett, Corporate and Community Initiatives Officer, just stating that you would like to speak or the comment you would like read on your behalf. The second option is if you have joined us via phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand and that will let us know you would like to speak. Alternatively, if your hand has been raised in error, you can press *9 again to lower your hand. At this time, Mayor Robinson, just taking a quick review of the dashboard as well as the chat. I am not seeing any members of the public wishing to speak during this portion.
Okay. Thank you. And I too just looked at the dashboard. Thank you very much, Supervisor Hewlett. 4.5 then, next steps. Clerk Scharbeck, could you provide the next step summary?
To you, Mayor, as Planner Spencer noted in her report, the next steps will be for council to consider a bylaw to amend the zoning bylaw and there is one for council's consideration in our regular council agenda. After that, there will be an appeal period before the applicant can move forward with their next steps.
Thank you. Okay. Item number 5, close the public meeting. To the recommendation, Clerk Sharp.
Through you, the recommendation is that council hereby closes the public meeting at 9:41 a.m.
Is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Hutchinson, is there a seconder for this motion? Deputy Mayor Hutchinson. All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 7 members of council have voted in favor. The motion is carried. This concludes our public meeting. All right, now we return to our council meeting, beginning with item number 6, and that is comment period. Supervisor Hewlett, could you please identify how a member of our public can participate in item number 6, please?
Absolutely. Just again, for members of the public, it should be noted that public participation must be done through the Zoom meeting software and cannot be done through the live stream on YouTube. For members of the public wishing to provide comment at this time, they may do so in one of 2 ways. The first, if you have joined us using the online meeting software on Zoom, you can either raise your hand, usually located in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, or you can send a chat message to myself, Cody Hewlett, Corporate and Community Initiatives Officer, either stating that you would like to speak or a comment that you would like read on your behalf. The second option for members of the public who have called into the meeting via phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand, and that will let us know that you would like to speak. Alternatively, if your hand has been raised in error, you can press *9 again to lower your hand.
Oh, I do see Genevieve Sharbuck as you're checking your screen, the dashboard. Supervisor Hewlett, thank you for that. Clerk Sharbuck, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, I have received a written comment dropped off
Thank you.
with a request that it be provided to council. It's regarding agenda item 11.2.1, report about the sale of land. And it is a comment from Mr. Bob Miller. And he states, I'm writing with my concerns about selling of unmaintained road on concession 14 between the 20th Side Road and Mullock Road. This road has been there for 150 years and was used as a road. It should be left as it is so people can walk in and see wildlife and wetland plants. Signed, Robert J. Miller. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Supervisor Hewlett, could you identify if there's anyone that wishes to participate in comment period?
Yes, absolutely, Mayor Robinson. I have received one chat message from Mark Crowder stating that she would like to speak. So I can unmute her at your request.
Please go ahead. Good morning, Mark Crowder. How are you? And please go ahead.
Sorry, too complicated to get myself unmuted. Anyways, just a couple of short comments, and it is to do with the report from concession 2. And first of all, thank you for the pavement. The road is good, and we're happy with that. I guess one of the questions from the report that you're reading today, the one place when road safety, it says it's a safe road. And then in the end of the next paragraph, it talks about the corner being sharp and that trailers and longer trucks will have to encroach onto oncoming lanes of traffic or travel through the corners. And I guess I wonder how this road is safe to meet oncoming traffic and encroaching on it's the sight line partially because you can't see the traffic coming. So how is someone going to know if they're meeting somebody that's encroaching? So just a comment, what I want to remind people that really in 1994, the OMB decision that was made and came into play with the Miller cement plant, at that time, the residents weren't lobbying so much for the bridge or to keep the traffic off the bridge as much as that curve. And it was because of school buses and whatever back then. There's other neighbors and myself that were involved at that time. We've been around a long time, and just want to remind council that curve hasn't improved since that OMB ruling. I just would comment that if you can't rule in our favor as the neighbors have requested, I hope that you will give further consideration down the road if we're finding that traffic is increasing and that corner is, we all know it says right in the report that it's not safe, that council would give some kind of consideration to doing something about haul routes, whether it's another road that's designated for a haul route. I do really question the comments about being hard to enforce, because I'm sure that the speeding on this road and the increased traffic is going to be harder to enforce than the bylaw that we presented as a sample, and hope that you would endorse. Just thanks, and do appreciate the work, and we're glad to see the bridges being worked on and the pavement is excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark Crowder, very much for your comments. Supervisor Hewlett, is there anyone else that wishes to comment at this time?
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. From what I can see on my end, that concludes all members of the public that would like to speak at this time.
All right then, thank you very much. Item 7, unfinished business. For this particular agenda, there is none. Item 8, adoption of minutes. 8.1, September 13, 2021, public meeting. Members of council, any questions on these minutes? Okay, Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The September 21st council minutes have reference to the Saugeen.
Councillor, pardon me, we're not on September 21st just yet. We're on this September 13th.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were dealing with both at the same time.
No, individually. Oh, I will call upon you again. So for September 13, 2021 public meeting, any comments then? All right then. 8.2, September 21st, 2021 council meeting. Any comments, beginning with Councillor Townsend? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry about that.
No worries.
The September 21st has a resolution dealing with the Saugeen Municipal Airport agreement, and there is also a notice of motion on this agenda regarding the same. I'm wondering if we could abbreviate the length of resolving the discussion around that by having a motion to reconsider. And I realize that motion has to be by someone who voted for the motion, is my understanding. If the clerk agrees, I'm wondering if we do that at this point, or whether there's another point in the agenda we could do that.
Okay, thank you for the question. Clerk Scharbeck, to Councillor Townsend's question, as he's just inquiring about a motion, and there was quite a bit of activity in that meeting recorded in the minutes. So is a reconsideration at this point, or with regard to the notice of motion, please?
I'm not too sure what the request is. I'll just find that in the minutes here.
Thank you.
So there were a number of motions regarding that item. Some were amending motions. The first amending motion failed. So which motion would you want to reconsider?
Councillor Townsend.
I was looking at the, I think it's 448, which actually talks about the 2-year notice. So let me just see.
What page are you on in the agenda? Counselor?
I was just looking at that. Thank you. It's on page 14 of 114.
Mhm. Okay,
And it says, whereas Westgrade must give 2 years notice before exiting the partnership. I actually thought we were a little more aggressive than that about sending notice of leaving, but that isn't the way it's worded here. So I was going to raise that as well, but the reconsideration of that motion itself may address the notice of motion that is also on this agenda, if we were to clarify and reconsider what in fact has already been done.
so you're referring to, Counselor, on page 14 of our agenda, resolution number 448-2021.
That's correct.
Clerk Sharbeck to the Counselor's inquiry.
So as far as when to bring forward a motion to reconsider, I would say that would be a notice of motion.
Okay,
That motion 448 regarding the Saugeen Municipal Airport be reconsidered. So it
Okay, and
would
would that
be
actually happen
it
at this
wouldn't
meeting?
be in approving the minutes because the minutes reflect what happened at the meeting, but it would be in another portion of our meeting.
in the new business section.
Yes.
Okay,
And so
okay, Counselor?
would that be addressed during this meeting? The reconsideration, or would it be next meeting?
Clerk Sharbeck, the notice of motion would be identified for the next meeting. Would that be correct, Clerk Sharbeck, or do you have a different procedural response?
If our procedural bylaw says a notice of motion would be voted on at the next meeting if notice is given at this meeting and not on the agenda, but it's council's wish how they would want to proceed with that.
So that would be during the new business section, Counselor.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for the question. And Clerk Sharbeck, thank you for the procedural assistance. Is there any other questions with regard to the September 21st, 2021 council meeting minutes? And I'm referring to 8.2 on our agenda. All right, seeing none. Clerk Sharbeck to the recommendation, please.
Through you, the recommendation is that the minutes of the public meeting of September 13th, 2021 and the regular meeting of September 21st, 2021 are hereby approved as circulated.
Will there be a mover for this motion? Councillor Townsend. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hutchinson. Questions on the motion? All those in favor then indicate with a raised hand. 7 members of council have voted in favor of the motion. The motion is carried. Item number 9, committee and board reports. And I will, as always, go through them individually. 9.1, Elmwood Community Center Board, August 3rd, 2021 minutes. Questions? 9.2, pardon me? All right,
I'm sorry, Worship, I haven't got there yet. I'm just catching up.
okay. You tell me when, Clerk Sharbeck.
We're good to go. Thank you for that.
Oh, no worries. 9.2, Saugeen Municipal Airport Commission, August 30th, 2021 minutes. Any questions? 9.3, West Grey Traffic Safety Working Group, September 8th, 2021 minutes. First on the minutes, are there any questions? Thank you. Now you'll see on your agenda, there are 2 separate recommendations. The first one is dealing with the terms of reference and mandate for the West Grey Traffic Safety Working Group. And then there's also a recommendation with regard to the minutes. So first, the recommendation, before I ask Clerk Sharbeck to read the recommendations, I have 2 hands up, so I'd like to address that. Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, sorry, I just wasn't catching up. We are looking at my notes here. Under the last one regarding the West Grey Traffic Safety Working Group.
Yes.
Question under point 8C. It talks about that the Chief Martin provided information regarding a recent campaign by West Grey Police Service aimed at enforcement of commercial truck regulation. Was noted there was 50% out of service rate. As a result of this campaign, further enforcement measure will be going. just wondered if, I'm sure that maybe the chief's not on here, but maybe someone on that committee could explain what they're really talking about there. I don't really understand that statement. 50% out of service rate.
All right, so I'm going to suggest, we've got two members of this committee that are on council. Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, do you have a response to Councillor Hutchinson's inquiry?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Robinson. What that's referring to, Councillor Hutchinson, is the twice a year the MTO works in alliance with West Grey Police, and they do a blitz, if you will. It's an MTO week. So what they did was they focus, or they target all commercial traffic or trucks coming through, and they pull them over. So what the 50% is, it would be a failure rate, whether it be brakes, it could be structure of the actual unit, it could be logbook violations if MTO found something like that with one of the drivers, etc., etc. So it's anything kind of related to that. It's not completely all mechanical driven, but a variety of different things. So, and again, maybe overweight on a weight restricted road would be another one. So basically 50% of the traffic stop during that week had some form of violation, if that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hutchinson, I was also going to give Councillor Townsend an opportunity if you wanted to provide any info on this, just as he is another member of this committee. Pardon me. Please go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The context of why that information was shared was the chief was also telling us another inspection was coming up and wanted to relay that the last time they held the inspection, the results were a 50% failure rate. And he was just informing the group just how much issue those inspections are uncovering, and just the condition of some trucks on the road. So just to be careful.
Thank you. Back to you, Councillor Hutchinson.
Okay, so just a part with the procedure part, that helps to clarify that. Are we at 9.3 in terms of the recommendation, or are we still at 9.1, 9.2?
For your question, we have not had the recommendation for that follows after we deal with the minutes, and I just want to address your question and Councillor Townsend before I ask Clerk Scharbeck to read the recommendation dealing with the change of terms of reference and mandate. We're not there just yet.
Okay, all right, I'll hold off then for a minute then. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to speak to the recommendation.
Oh, you're just not there yet.
Sorry?
You're wanting to speak to the first recommendation that's listed there?
Just a comment on what happened at the meeting, to be honest.
Well, I'll get a mover and seconder, and I'll come to you first.
Super. I didn't know whether we needed a mover or seconder. I
It's
thought
for
if
the...
we receive the minutes, it automatically gets accepted.
Hang on, one moment. We're going to deal on the order of the agenda. So the recommendation from the Traffic Advisory Working Group, we'll deal with that recommendation first. And then once that is dispensed with, then we'll deal with the recommendation on the, we'll have a mover and seconder for the minutes of the committees and boards to be received. Okay?
Okay.
We're not there yet. So are there any other questions with regard to 8.3, the West Grey Traffic Safety Working Group, September 8th, 2021 minutes? Councillor Shea.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we're discussing the recommendation of 9.3?
9.3, we're dealing with the minutes. If there's any questions on the minutes, and then I'm going to ask Clerk Scharbeck to then read the recommendation that follows on your agenda. We're almost there.
Thank you. I'll hold on.
Everybody's eager. Everybody's eager. All right, then we're now going to the first recommendation under item number 9. Clerk Scharbeck, could you please read that recommendation?
Through you, Mayor Robinson, the recommendation is that Council consider enhancing or revising the terms of reference and mandate for the group, the West Grey Traffic Safety Working Group, such that it continues to work on speeding as one of its prime focuses, but also continue collaboration with the Director of Infrastructure Public Works and the Chief of Police to identify and address other areas that it could provide support on and come back to council with a revised mandate after that collaboration.
Will there be a mover for this recommendation? Councillor Hamilton? And is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Townsend. Now, questions with regard to the motion at hand. And I'll go to Councillor Townsend first, and then Councillor Hutchinson, because they both indicated interest prior to this motion. Please go ahead, Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to note that there was quite a discussion on this point as to whether to go forward, whether not to go forward, and primarily because of the support from the Chief of Police and the Director of Infrastructure and Public Works. They both found it very helpful, moving things forward, identifying the issues and solutions, and so they encourage us to actually go forward. There was a suggestion that maybe we close down and come back later, but re-educating and getting a group of people together didn't make sense when you've already got people that are capable of moving forward and have gone through that process already. So I just wanted to share that with council.
Thank you, and I'm glad you did that. And over to you, Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, I think I'll just refrain making comment to hold my comment for 10.1 because I see that as tying into this recommendation. So I'd like to make a comment when we get to item 10.1.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions with regard to the motion at hand? Councillor Shea.
Thank you, Your Worship. I support the committee's suggestion that they continue their efforts. I think they've done a great job, but the impact is going to be slow in being adopted throughout the municipality. I do think that I would rather see the emphasis remain on traffic safety. The expansion of the committee's purview to include parking seems completely out of context in relation to traffic safety. I understand that parking, especially parking of large trucks, is an issue that needs to be tidied up. But I really think I would like to see this group of continuing its great focus on traffic safety, whether that's speeding, engineering, signs, education, cameras, whatever. I think that's always been identified in the community as one of the priorities. So I would also like to recommend to the members of the committee that they indicate in the minutes that they have not seen a lot of additional complaints or comments coming to them from members of the public, but I speak to people all the time who say they're concerned about traffic and don't know that there's a traffic safety committee. So I would suggest this committee might want to undertake some sort of a public meeting or public consultation together with staff, just to ensure that we have ongoing dialogues about the traffic hotspots within our community. So in the minutes, the committee indicates that they wanted to expand their mandate to include parking. This recommendation does not specifically say to include parking, but it does say come back. It does say to expand their mandate. So I guess I wanted to get some feedback from the committee members if speeding and traffic safety is still going to remain the main focus of this group. Thank you.
Thank you. And please all keep in mind that we're not dealing with a revised mandate or terms of reference at this time, but appreciate all the comments that council has. Councillor Townsend and then Deputy Mayor.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Shea, for your comments. We did have a discussion on parking, and we did decide that it really requires a review of the parking bylaw, and that it will be passed over to the Director of Infrastructure and Public Works. And Mr. Zawinski agreed with that, and so it will not be part of the traffic safety. It will be external to that. And yes, we do get the odd complaint that we can bring to the table when they come. But you're correct. If we move forward, we will be trying to do some form of consultation to get input, and also try to address things at the high level, so that what we're looking at is not necessarily trying to do every location, but trying to figure out if there are some things also we can do at a high level that would help traffic safety. That's what we've done with some of our recommendations on reducing speeds, which leads me into the comment where you said it will move slowly, and it does, because we still have some motions that need to come to council to get a council request to the county for those reductions, and also to the province for the reductions on the provincial road, Highway 6. So we are moving slowly, but we are progressing. You'll see more of the speed monitoring devices come forward, and same for the cushioning, and hopefully we'll see them soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Hutchinson.
Sorry, thank you, Mayor Robinson. I just wanted to respond to why we did discuss truck parking, because there is some areas throughout West Grey where we've had some larger equipment that is parked, and the reason it has been discussed on a couple of occasions is simply it's blind spots. It's the narrowing, or some of the traffic has to go around it, and so that becomes a public safety thing, and that's why you'll see it on there, and there was a wholesome discussion. Councillor Townsend has acknowledged that we brought that forward, and Director Sawinski is going to take it from there. But just so for clarity why it was on there, because there's still many calls that come in, I do receive on some of these hotter areas, but the director's taking that over. Also, I just wanted to make sure that everybody, for transparency, our meetings are posted on the website. I believe they'd be open to the public because we are on Zoom, so if anybody certainly like to attend, or if they have any questions, they can reach out to any staff member or anybody that's on that committee, and we'd certainly welcome their thoughts or input. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I do want to just draw attention to our minutes that we just passed, and that is, I'm just referring to September 21st, 2021. And if we look to resolution 4.5.4-2021, the staff bring forward a cost analysis for a traffic study for Sadler Street East, followed by a traffic study for all urban roads in West Grey, to the 2022 budget deliberations, as well as an estimate cost for the development of a traffic calming plan, which was carried. So we definitely have information, data to look forward to as well. All right, I did see Councillor Hamilton's hand up. Please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mayor Robinson. And I just wanted to extend a big thank you and congratulations to this committee. It's a newer committee, and I love how it's brought together different staff from, from police, from our own municipal staff, and our eyes and ears on the ground, our residents together to work together for these solutions. So well done. I'm really excited that the committee wants to keep going, because I know there's the sky's the limit in terms of the work that you could do. So you definitely have my support. And I was just noticing as part of the recommendation, it mentions that speeding as one of its prime focuses, and that the committee will be reviewing its mandate and will bring that back to council.
Indeed.
When I look at the summary of the committee's mandate on the website, where it describes what committees do, the mandate right now is broader than speeding. Well, speeding is one of the items, but it does say traffic calming options for and education, enforcement, road engineering in the built environment, and just traffic safety issues, generally speaking. So certainly the mandate that's there is quite broad. And to Councillor Shea's point, I think there's great opportunity for education and for connecting with our community, maybe with surveys, or what's your biggest concern here in West Grey, and just kind of gathering that information. And to Councillor Hutchinson's point that we later in our agenda on council, we have a concern for traffic safety. And wouldn't that be really cool if council could refer these concerns to the committee for their feedback and their recommendation, where we have community and police and public works working together? I think that's a great opportunity. So you have my full support, and I look forward to seeing your amended terms of reference coming back to council in a future meeting. Well done.
Thank you, and well said, Councillor. Committees in action. Wonderful. I'm not seeing any other hands up. And so on the motion that was moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Townsend, all those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 7 members of council have voted in favor. The motion is carried. Now there's one other recommendation under item 9, and Clerk Sharbeck, could you please read that?
Mayor, the recommendation is that minutes of committees and boards are hereby received.
Is there a mover for this motion? Deputy Mayor, and seconder, Councillor Hergert. Any questions? All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 7 members of council have voted in favor of this motion. The motion is carried. We're now moving on to item number 10. Correspondence 10.1, items requiring action. 10.1.1, N. Reg. Sonnenberg, Side Road 5, speed limit safety issue. Now, the recommendation only goes so far. Clerk Sharbeck, could you read that portion of it?
Through you, Your Worship, the recommendation is there in the event that a member of council would like to move and another member second, direction to staff. Not sure just how council would like to address the correspondence item.
Indeed. Thank you very much. Councillor Hutchinson, I did note you wanted to speak to this item. Please go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to speak to you. Councillor Hamilton sort of stole my thunder, but anyways, I wanted to suggest that because this is talking about speeding and it is an issue all across West Grey and all across Ontario and whatever, I was going to recommend that this speed and traffic calming issue be forwarded to our traffic safety group to make a recommendation to council regarding the Haffermel issue. I mean, this is something I think that because they're talking about speeding, that they could look at and say, okay, if we're going to do it here, we maybe need to do it another place, and maybe look at some of these hot spots across West Grey that they can make recommendations to council to say, we need to put some speed signs up here in this area. So I think it's a good opportunity to, encourage our traffic safety committee to go forward with recommendations to council.
And is that your motion then? Are you moving that?
I could, maybe I need the clerk to help word that, but I had something along the line of recommend speed and traffic calming issues be forwarded to the traffic safety working group for recommendations to council regarding Haffermel issue and other areas.
Great. We'll just give the clerk one moment. She'll read it back to ensure that the language is what you're looking for. And then at that time, I'll look for a seconder.
Through you, Your Worship. Councillor Hutchinson, I'll just check that I've got this right. The council hereby directs that this matter be referred to the West Grey Traffic Safety Working Group for consideration and a recommendation to council.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
Is there a seconder for this? Deputy Mayor, seconding it. Any questions, members of council, on the motion at hand? All right. Councillor Hutchinson, you still have your hand up, double checking?
No, just a further comment on that.
Yep.
I think it's important that in this traffic working group that we do have the police chief to have input, because obviously he's going to know the issues in the area. So I think it's great that it goes back to them, and then he can report on what he sees in that area. So I think that's important. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I do know that Councillor Hutchinson said that we look at it in a broader sense. And that was my point. When we get a request or we get an item identified, we do look beyond just the other point. So thank you for that acknowledgement as well. The mayor referenced that we will be seeing data. And that's the biggest reason that the chief and the director of infrastructure and public works are members of that. We gave them a choice to actually be members of that, and they both more than willingly agreed, and for exactly the reasons you noted. So we are aware of that, we are looking for that, and that's what they bring to the table, as well as their experience in other ways of solutions too. So thank you again.
Thank you. Anything further, members of council? All right. All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 7 members of council have voted in favor of this motion. The motion is carried. 10.2, items for information. 10.2.1, Durham Agricultural Society, thank you letter. Any comments on that? All right. 10.2.2, Saugeen Valley Children's Safety Village, thank you letter. Any comments? Councillor Hergert.
Yes, thank you. I did attend the Children's Safety Village probably about 2 years ago now for a walkthrough and to see the classrooms and to see what they've built there. That was a former conservation area, and I believe it's still owned by conservation with a long-term lease. But this is a really great opportunity for kids to learn the safety hazards out on the roads, let's say. And Mr. Al Leach, I'd just like to thank him for taking me on that tour, and I'm sure he'd be willing to take any other members of council if you'd like to go visit the location. And thank you so much to the police and the fire that have been out there and demonstrating their skill sets. So that's really important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I too had an opportunity a few years ago to tour the Children's Safety Village, and I can encourage members of council to have a tour. Perhaps that's something that we can coordinate through Mr. Al Leach. And I think that's really important. I am going to provide a certificate of acknowledgement and thank you for all the work on the Children's Safety Village, and for certain recognizing staff that are participate in that, including West Grey Fire and West Grey Police Services. Any other comments? All right, Clerk Sharbeck, then to the recommendation, please.
The recommendation is that council hereby receives all correspondence items not otherwise dealt with.
Is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Herger. Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Hutchinson. Questions to the motion? All those in favor indicate with the raised hand. All 7 members of council have voted in favor. The motion is carried. On item 11, staff reports. You have your hand up, Councillor Hutchinson. I was thinking if I'm anticipating at 1:45 for a break, but that's public service announcement I get. Do you have another question or inquiry?
It was going to be my recommendation, just foreseeing that we may have a lengthy discussion on this topic. I was going to recommend that we have a break now, previous to this topic, if that's okay.
Oh, for sure. I'm very open to other suggestions. Members of council, would you like to have that break now? Okay. I think Councillor Hutchinson, that is a great idea. And how about we come back at, well, for 15 minutes, 10:35? Does that work for everyone? I'll see you then. And I'm just reminding you to turn off your audio and video. See you back at 10:35. Okay, it's 10:35 a.m. I hope everybody had a great break. I'm just first looking to see if we have all members of council and Supervisor Hewlett. Are we ready to roll with the recording and Clerk Scharbeck and Madam CAO? Do we have the staff that we require? Bunch of questions. Supervisor Hewlett first.
Yes, from my end, we are good to go.
Thank you. Madam CAO?
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Oh, excuse me. Yes, I see everybody that we need for this portion.
All right, and I see Clerk Scharbeck as well. So, okay, I'm calling our meeting back to order. We are on item 11, staff reports, 11.1, Director of Infrastructure and Public Works, 11.1.1, concession to WGR truck traffic. Now, I do see, as you all do, the recommendation is not complete because this is where council will need to determine what they wish to do. So is there anybody that wishes to address this at this point? Did I see Councillor Hamilton, was your hand up?
Oh, excuse me, Mayor Robinson, perhaps I'm confused as to where we are. Are we at 11.1.1?
Yes, concession to WGR. So the
perfect.
recommendation is report concession to WGR, and where it's not a full recommendation at this point. So just for clarity and for addressing it again. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you. I wonder if the director, assuming he's here, would be able to talk to a summary of the different challenges. And I say that because there were some pointed out by Mark Crowder when she made her comment earlier in the meeting. It talks about class of road. It talks about the requirements for transportation, truck transportation, the suggestion of the bylaw, then, you know, the design of the road. So I'm wondering if there could be a summary of sort of what was reviewed and how we got here so that everybody gets to hear that firsthand. If the director is amenable to that.
Sure. Normally we go with a recommendation because it isn't complete. There's further direction required from council. We can address that. Madam CAO.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. If I could just clarify, the copy of the agenda that I have, it looks to me like the recommendation is as staff had intended it, that there's two parts to it, that the report be received and council approves the following three portions that were contained in the staff's report. So I don't think that there was any empty pieces to that recommendation. That's it in its entirety. So council could put that on, put that on the floor for as a complete recommendation.
Well, thank you for that clarity, Madam CEO. It does look like there was some further requirements that were needed, and then the second paragraph. Thank you. So, Clerk Scharbeck, could you please read the recommendation at hand?
Yes, through you, Your Worship. The recommendation is that report concession to WGR truck traffic be received, and further, that council approves the following recommendations: maintain existing restrictions, reduce speed, and install additional warning signage.
Thank you. I'll take a mover and seconder, and then we'll have Director Shawinski provide information. Councillor Hamilton, are you moving the motion? Thank you. Is there a seconder for this motion? Deputy Mayor, are you seconding the motion? Oh, no, I see Deputy Mayor seconding. Sorry, I'm trying to keep with our new process. All right, with Director Shawinski, Councillor Townsend has identified some points within the motion, but also we did have a member of our public during comment period. So please go ahead with information.
Good morning, Your Worship, members of council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Super. So what I have here is my report about the concerns with respect to truck traffic on concession 2. Essentially, the summary is that basically that the road has been resurfaced. Local residents have cited safety concerns and have expressed concerns with potential changes in traffic volumes and speeds, and are requesting restrictions be imposed for truck traffic north of the Lance Bridge. And this report outlined, basically what I've done here is I've outlined in a report how we got to where we are right now. In my background and discussion, there's essentially resolutions that essentially where council has directed me to come back to and provide a report on how to maintain restrictions for truck traffic on concession 2. And further, that I also reference the correspondence that was received by council at a separate meeting with respect to a truck bylaw and concerns from residents. So essentially, the road resurfacing was essentially completed with respect to the Enbridge Owenstown reinforcement project. And essentially, I've outlined here that the pavement thicknesses are sufficient to sustain all vehicular traffic from a localized perspective and so forth. And I've also outlined here some concession or some concerns from local residents on concession 2, where essentially currently right now, I have here for the past number of decades, heavy truck traffic was significantly reduced on concession 2 due to the Lawrence Bridge and due to the OMB development agreement between Miller Paving and the former Township of Bannock. So essentially, so concession 2 has been a very quiet environment with respect to those restrictions due to the load of the bridge and so forth. And so they naturally have concerns when the Lawrence Bridge is being replaced as we speak on concession 2. So once the bridge is repaired and replaced and that is open with 2 lanes of traffic, and essentially we've got a newly paved road and so forth, their concerns essentially are with respect to higher speeds and of course navigating, and I bring to the next point in my report is the road safety. So the road is safe to travel on. However, there are S-curves and there is horizontal and vertical alignment, as in sharp corners and hills, that are concerning, and they cannot be navigated at 80 kilometers an hour, and that's why I recommend in my report that the speed limits be reduced significantly in those corner areas, which will enable motorists to react as they're coming around those corners. There is sightline issues due to the sharpness of the corners. And even though the road was resurfaced on concession 2, the layout of that road and the design of that road, it was essentially resurfaced. So nothing really has changed with respect to the alignment of that road significantly. So that's, the road was resurfaced in reference to the Ontario provincial specifications. So we've used the proper asphalt and the thickness, and the reason why we went with asphalt is because it's essentially it wears longer, it's better than a surface treatment and so forth, and in the end it requires less maintenance as opposed to tar and chip. So that was the preferred surface to go with, so essentially that's kind of where we are right now. And and then of course I outline here with respect to truck traffic, stop. We discussed this at great length, and I consulted with everyone on my team and on our team, and these are the recommendations that we've come up with, so that we can. And that's to maintain the current restrictions that we have, which is with respect to seasonal load restrictions and the decision made at the OMB regarding the cement trucks traveling north. Essentially reduce the speed limit, which is going to make the road safer to be on and so forth, because regardless of what traffic is on that road, in order for people, if people are cycling and walking and so forth, the reduced speed limit is going to make it a safer road to be on. And of course, the third item that I have in the recommendation here is to increase signage. So the residents have said they want signs to deal with or to warn motorists about people that are walking on the road, to warn motorists about school bus stops and so forth. Obviously, to warn traffic about the corners and so forth, to reduce the speed through those corners and so forth. And so that's obviously what I'm recommending there as well, as opposed to a truck bylaw itself, which when reviewing the truck bylaw and so forth and looking through all of the exemptions that are provided in the language of the sample bylaw, there are essentially a lot of exemptions there. Essentially, it would exempt, as with respect to the bylaw, it would exempt essentially a lot of heavy truck traffic for the folks that live on concession 2, for deliveries that are being made on concession 2 if there's no other way for them to get there. Obviously, vehicles operated by the municipality, any vehicles, any large trucks that deal with the transportation of milk, fire apparatus, garbage trucks and recycling trucks, and essentially any traffic, any heavy truck traffic to deal with livestock, feed, live poultry, agricultural, any large trucks that has to do with gas, transporting gas, heating fuel, etc. And in the sample bylaw provided here is exemptions that are issued by the township should they choose to go with a bylaw. So with all of those challenges and all of those considerations, staff put in, as indicated in the report, to sum it up, we're recommending a speed reduction through concession 2.
Thank you, Director Shrinsky. I'm now taking questions from members of council, beginning with Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To you, Director, a couple of comments and observations. I noticed that from Grey Road 4 up to the Lance Bridge, you put 90 millimeters of road surfacing on because of the truck traffic. I'm wondering, will the northern part above the bridge at 50 millimeters, will that sustain the amount of truck traffic that we anticipate or have seen? Do you know
Director Shrinsky.
Through your worship, that's a very good question. That would remain to be seen. If essentially it was resurfaced with respect to being essentially a class 4 road, and the surface that's there is better than what was there before, absolutely. However, I would submit that with if in fact there is sustained truck traffic, like that, for example, if everything off of the road is essentially has not been designed for highway truck volumes and traffic that you would see on Highway 4 or Highway 6. So that's essentially so as far as the breakdown of the asphalt, if it were thicker, yes, it would last longer, but what's there right now is sufficient for what we need to do.
Okay. Sorry, Madam Mayor. My second question has to do with the reference you made at the public meeting, which I believe had to do with the volume of traffic, and it might have been class of road. I'm not sure, but you said basically the amount of traffic that you'd seen before meant you had to build to a certain level or standard. Can you explain that link and how that's reflected in the report?
Well, I mean, if I'm understanding through your worship, if I'm understanding your question correctly, I mean, we understand that there is going to be getting back to the whole 90 mils. We understand that there's going to be obviously a lot of truck traffic coming to and from the ready mix plant that's on concession 2. Again, the preferred design or choice is to go with asphalt because it's thicker than it's much thicker than what tar and chip would provide. So it can sustain some traffic, and but but to sustain, like if it was essentially left at an 80K road, and you know, and I can understand the concerns from the residents and so forth with the volume of truck traffic. Essentially, that's why the speed reduction is necessary. And with that being the case, the thickness of the asphalt would be fine with respect to the classification of road. To tie into the classification of road, if you have higher traffic counts, then the class of the road is essentially may change, depends on how much traffic travels on that road. And as we move forward with respect to traffic counts on our roads, that's what changes the classification. It really comes down to the speed and the volume of traffic that are on those roads.
Okay, addressing one of the comments that was made earlier today, was there any consideration for actually creating a haul route other than just allowing it to go down concession 2? Meaning it's a road that's either more appropriate, less dangerous, there's less challenges, right, and risk actually, you know, to the residents and or the people driving up and down. So I wondered whether there was any consideration for a different route for trucks.
At this particular point in time, through your worship, at this particular point in time, we hadn't really considered a specific truck route. Although other municipalities have done that, and I understand that potentially that may be something that council needs to address in the future is perhaps truck roads.
Thank you. I would like to move an amendment to the motion that actually requests that get formally looked at before we actually make a final decision on that this is the solution for the trucks that go down there. And I say that more because of the risk on the curves. I know I was talking to someone who actually said that the real concern was, you know, they're still meeting vehicles, sorry, prior to the closure, they were still meeting vehicles that don't respect the speed and do cross over the line. And you're saying that the road is basically the same design, it's just built better now, right? So they may do.
What's your motion, Councillor? What's your amending motion then?
Yes, so the amending motion is that we consider looking at a alternate hauling route before accepting the recommendations of the director of staff.
All right, Clerk Sharbeck, I just want to ensure that you have the language appropriate, and then to have that read back, and then I look for a seconder on the amendment.
Through your worship, I have the amending motion that the motion be amended by adding that council consider looking at another hauling route before considering the recommendations in this report, but the recommendations are already included in the main motion. So I think this is making the main motion the exact opposite of the main motion if we take those recommendations out.
So it's not an amending motion, then it's something that, are you suggesting that the main motion be addressed first and then, and if necessary, then this one, or what is your procedural approach if it's the direct opposite then?
I'm not sure. I guess I would like clarity on the amendment.
Okay.
Or if it's council's wish to pass a motion to receive the report and then pass a second motion regarding either the recommendations that are set out or something different. We do have this one on the floor though, so it's been moved and seconded as it is. I'm just not sure how the amending motion doesn't change it 100% if we're not dealing with the recommendations that are in it.
Or we could separate out the two items, so to have a motion to receive.
I guess we could have, but technically the full motion has been moved and seconded. So this is what's on the floor before council. So amending it, I'm not sure if it's, I just would like clarity from Councillor Townsend. Do you mean that council consider looking at another hauling route before implementing the recommendations in the report, or before considering them? Because
Yeah, before considering them.
then that is the opposite of what's been moved and seconded, because it's been moved and seconded that they be approved.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure how you'd like to deal with that. Perhaps vote on this one and then present another option if this motion fails.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm
all
asking
right then.
through you, Mayor, I just wonder if perhaps I don't understand, Councillor Townsend. I just want
Yeah,
to make sure we get it right.
Yeah, the intent really was to say that we have 3 recommendations on the table, but another option is available that the director said he had not yet looked at. But if council so instructed, he could. So I see the CAO's hands up. I wonder if we could get her comment first before proceeding.
Okay, so you have nothing further to say on what you're suggesting, is that correct, Councillor Townsend?
Sorry?
You have nothing further to say with regard with what you're proposing?
Not at this point. I'd like to hear the CAO's comments because I know she's got her hands up.
Okay, Madam CAO.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson, and thank you, Councillor Townsend. I would just like to point out, pardon me, in the recommendation that's before you that has been moved and seconded, parts of this we would be maintaining regardless. The additional warning signage, my understanding from the director from a safety perspective, those signs would be installed, and maintaining the existing restrictions. I believe that that's the OMB directive. So other than reducing the speed limit, I'm wondering, Councillor Townsend, if you're considering that we do a couple of these and then take away a little bit of work regarding alternate haul routes, if it's an addition to this, because I don't think you'd want us to not put those safety features in. That would be something that we would do just operationally anyway.
That makes perfect sense, Madam CAO, which is why I wanted to hear sort of what you were proposing, because the intent is not to stop the safety features.
Right.
It's really to manage the traffic portion. Right. So do you have a recommendation on how we could proceed to do that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I would recommend that I should be sitting beside the clerk right now. However, I think what I'd like to suggest to council is that you support our request to install the warning signage and the maintain the existing restrictions. We could have a bigger conversation if council would like to take a pause on reducing the speed. That you could pull that piece out of it and then add your suggestion for the alternate haul route. But if staff could leave with at least support for those 2 items today, I think that would help us, do some of the work that we think is necessary over here.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I wonder then if we could ask the clerk to proceed as the CAO just outlined. So
Amending motion.
proceed with everything except remove the reduction in speed and replace it with a takeaway that means that looking at an alternate hauling route would be done as part of that. That would be the 3rd recommendation.
Over to you, Clerk Sherbeck, for the clarity.
Through you, Mayor Robinson, I'm wondering, Councillor Townsend, what if we said that the main motion be amended by removing the recommendation to reduce speed and adding further that staff, I'm not sure if you want the word investigate or look into options for hauling routes in West Grey.
That would be satisfactory. Yes.
Okay. And that staff investigate options for hauling routes.
Yeah, alternate hauling.
Options for alternate hauling routes in West Grey. So just to recap, that the main motion moved by Councillor Townsend be amended by removing the recommendation to reduce speed and adding and further that staff investigate options for alternate hauling routes in West Grey. Does that suit Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, so I'm looking for a seconder for this, and if you could raise your hand if you're prepared to second this amending motion. That'd be to raise your hand, your physical hand. All right, so Councillor, there's no one that is seconding your amending motion. So is there any other questions with regard to the main motion? All right, thank you, Councillor Townsend. Over to Councillor Hutchinson, then Hergert, then Shea.
Yeah, so I don't quite understand the haul route that Councillor Townsend's talking about, but I think that's a separate issue that we can look at outside this one. I'd just like to make a couple points here. I agree with the director that a no truck bylaw is problematic. There are many exemptions, and it would be a challenge to enforce. We have bylaws now that we have trouble enforcing, and I think just to put one more out there that says, we're going to keep track of what truck's going down the road, and is it one that's doing a service like a fuel truck or a farm truck, or is it one that's not supposed to be there? It becomes a bit of an issue. The other thing I think that by creating a truck bylaw is that it sets a precedent for other areas in West Grey, and I'm sure there's lots of other people out there who are going to come forward and say, well, we want a no truck bylaw on our road. So I think we set a precedent by doing that. So I think the idea of speeding is a way of getting to this. I don't see this being an alternate truck route anyways, because of the curves and because of the nature of the road. I'm going to suggest that we monitor it for a year and take a look at it and do some traffic counts for sure. And then maybe we can look at it again in another year. But the idea with speeding is an issue all across West Grey. And like I said earlier, when we talked about this with our traffic committee, it's an area that we need to look at. Maybe reducing the speeds on this road is good, but maybe also look at reducing speeds on all roads in West Grey, whether we make them 60 or 70, and then keep our through fares at maybe at 80. So it's an issue, and then again, maybe that's our traffic committee can help us with that in terms of looking at that. I'd just like to say that haul roads, when we talked about haul roads, like haul roads for pits, I agree, for gravel pits and cement pits, we need haul roads for that. We have one on this road on the 2nd. There's another pit on the 18th, which I'm not sure if we have a haul road, but anytime we have a gravel pit or something on that line, I think we should have haul roads. So that's something else that we have further discussion with the director later on. So Jen, basically, I agree with what the director has here. I think the signage, the speed limits, monitor it, but I don't agree with a no truck bylaw at this time. So that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're dealing with the main motion at hand. Councillor Hergert, please.
Thank you. To Councillor Hutchison's comments there regarding the traffic safety working group that we already have, I was curious if this has gone to that committee. We do have police, we have infrastructure, we have citizens from the community on that group. And I do also agree with Councillor Hutchison to monitor this situation over the next year as the bridge is done, as the pavement's done. I think there were some changes to the road. An acceleration lane was taken out. And the speed and volume we're going to have to look at, the numbers from traffic count from a few years ago would be very different likely than after the road has been repaired and fixed nicely. So I am curious about the traffic safety working group, if they've been involved in concession 2 at all, and I look to members of council for that.
I was wondering first, Director Sherwinski, has this come before the traffic task force?
Through your worship, no. This the heavy truck traffic issues on concession 2 have not been, to the best of my knowledge, have not been addressed at the traffic committee working group.
Okay.
Okay.
Councillor Hergert.
Yes.
Anything further?
Yes, so maintaining the existing restrictions, obviously that seems, reasonable. Reducing the speed, that seems reasonable. And installing the warning sign, that seems reasonable. I wonder if there are other recommendations from that traffic safety working group that would benefit this road and all of our constituents that live along there. So I'm going to put forward a motion to defer this item until after a recommendation comes back from the traffic safety working group.
Clerk Sharbeck, could you read the motion at hand, then the amending motion? Actually, the deferral motion. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, to you, Your Worship. Just to get it right, Councillor Hergert, that this motion be deferred until this item has been considered by the Traffic Safety Working Group?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so that does give a time period for that. So the motion to defer is not debatable except on the time frame. And then there's also a other section on that. But before we go any further, is there a seconder for this motion of deferral? And I would be looking for a raised hand. Councillor Townsend, are you seconding this deferral?
Yes, I am.
All right, then on the deferral, all those in favor indicate with a raised hand. All those opposed indicate with a raised hand. 2 members of council voted in favor of the motion. 4 members of council. Oh, there is somebody that didn't vote. Let me just double check that count. So all those in favor of the motion for the deferral, please raise your hand. That's in favor of the deferral motion. All right, 2 members. All those opposed to the deferral, please raise your hand. I want to get the appropriate count. 5, that's a 5 count. All right, 2 members of council voted in favor of the deferral. 5 members of council voted opposed to the deferral. The motion is lost. Okay, so now are there any, we are now just dealing with the main motion at hand, which is what you're seeing in the agenda package. Are there any other questions with regard to this motion? Councillor Shea and then Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to take a third crack at proposing an amendment. I support the instincts that the 2 previous councillors have demonstrated about wanting to get this right and looking at the bigger picture. I also really support the effort that the director has put into this report and many of the recommendations. The reduction of speed from 80 to 50 is a further reduction than I had expected. I was expecting it to go to 60. The reduction to 30 in the corners is even greater. I'm very pleased with that. So I would recommend that I'm going to make an amendment that leaves the entire motion as it is, but adds that the traffic safety working group and staff review alternate truck routes within West Grey over the next year. So that's just giving a mandate to look at the concept of alternate truck routes, which would alleviate truck traffic in our urban cores throughout West Grey as well. And we're not just talking about this one road. We're talking about how we're going to deal with truck traffic throughout the whole municipality. And I think we should be looking at the bigger picture here. So if council would support me in that amendment, I think we can get all this good work done and move on with some other additionally good work.
Thank you for your amendment. On the wording, Clerk Sharbeck, please, before I look for a seconder.
Through you, Mayor Robinson, moved by Councillor Shea, that the main motion be amended by adding and further that the Traffic Safety Working Group and staff work together to review alternate truck routes in West Grey over the next year.
Okay, Councillor Shea, is the language on the motion suitable?
Yes, thank you.
Is there a seconder? Is that you? Yep, Councillor Hergert is seconding the motion. Any questions on this amending motion for clarity before I call the vote? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate with a raised hand on this amending motion. 7 members of council have voted in favor of this amending motion. The motion is carried. Now we're back to the main motion. Is there any further questions of clarity? And I just wanted to double check. There was also a member, and seeing if that member still wishes to speak. Yes, Councillor Hamilton, please.
Well, thank you, Mayor Robinson. And I really appreciate where we've landed as council. I think this is a really good path forward. And I just want to say thank you to staff for addressing the concerns in the report so thoroughly. I do, and thank you to the neighborhood. Thank you to Concession, to residents who have a very long memory going back before Westgrey was even amalgamated. And so the information that you've brought forward and just your experience on the road day to day, it's really valuable. And I know as council, we make really well-informed decisions when we work with our community and staff, that well-rounded approach, which is what I'm hearing today. So thank you, everybody. I am still concerned about the encroachment piece. That's still an outstanding safety concern of mine. That's I'm hoping by deterring trucks from using this road altogether, maintaining the traffic patterns that we have already. I'm hopeful that this truck haul route will help reinforce those traffic patterns in a real healthy way. So I'm happy where we've landed for today, and we still have more work to do. And so thank you, council and staff and residents. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Anything further, members of council? Then Clerk Sharbeck, could you please read the motion at hand, because we've had a lot of discussion, and then I'll call the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. The recommendation moved by Councillor Hamilton and seconded by Deputy Mayor Hutchinson is that report concession 2 WGR truck traffic be received, and further that council approves the following recommendations: maintain existing restrictions, reduce speed, and install additional warning signage. And further that the traffic safety working group work together with staff to review alternate truck routes in Westgrey over the next year.
Thank you. Any questions? All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 7 members of council have voted in favor of this motion. The motion is carried. Wonderful discussion on the matter at hand. We are now moving on to 11.2, Manager of Planning and Development, 11.2.1. Peltier, request for purchase of municipal lands. Clerk Sharbeck, to the recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. The recommendation is that council receive request for purchase of lands, Peltier, and further that council declare a portion of the lands along concession 14 NDR as surplus, and further that council direct staff to commence the municipal disposal of property process in accordance with bylaw 23, 2008. And further that council supports staff's further recommendation that the lands be sold in their entirety for clarity, which is identified as those lands identified as the entire portion of concession 14 NDR between the 20th Side Road NDR and Mulock Road.
Is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Hutchinson. Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Shea. Planner Spencer, do you have any additional information with regard to the report at hand?
Thank you, Your Worship. Beyond the comments received by Mr. Miller, there are no additional pieces of information to add at this point in time. Clarification, it's always welcome if required. Thank you.
Thank you. For questions from members of council, we'll go with Councillor Hutchinson, Berger, Townsend, and Hamilton. Please go ahead, Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, first of all, I'm in favor of selling this property off. I understand where Mr. Miller's coming from. But from the Westgrey perspective, I think we need to look at some of these unopened road allowances and to get them off our plate. There are many of them being used by snowmobilers, four-wheelers, which we need to get a handle on where they're actually going and what our liability issues are. So this is one that the farming neighbors wish to use and whatnot. I encourage Mr. Miller to talk to these people, and I'm sure if they give them the go ahead to use it as a walking trail, there wouldn't be an issue, but it allows them to control access to this piece of property, which takes the liability away from West Grey. So I think that's what we're looking at, is try to get a handle on all these parcels of unopened land that's being used and potentially a liability issue for West Grey. So thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Councillor Hergert.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I do recognize Mr. Miller's comments, and I also recognize that we allow ATV users to use these unopened road allowances. And some of these unique places are the most beautiful places in West Grey that you can't get to by car. And I say that because this is part of a trail system of unopened road allowances that encourage people to get out into the country. And as Councillor Hutchison mentioned, snowmobilers, ATVs, etc. I'll leave my comments there, but I do acknowledge Mr. Bob Miller's comments on this.
Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had a similar concern to Mr. Miller in kind of a different way. If I recall, this portion of road actually crosses multiple or affects multiple other properties from an access perspective. And selling it as a whole may create an issue in the sense of one person buys it, they can control who can get in and out, and that may not be conducive to people being able to do the work. And I realize that agreements can be reached, but if they're not, then we've created a real contentious issue. And I don't know how staff has addressed that, if they have, or even identified that as a concern, because I no longer have that map per se available that we had earlier. I'm just wondering if staff could comment on that aspect of the entire road. Does it in fact cross or run beside, behind, whichever way you want to describe it, multiple landowners' properties, or is it single?
Planner Spencer.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship. Councillor Townsend, it does in fact cross several properties. The recommendation by staff to sell the property in its entirety was to avoid what I would term to be a checkerboard effect, wherein one adjacent landowner may be interested in a portion of the road and another landowner may be interested in another portion of the road. So that would create issues. It would not resolve the access issue for these individuals. This would facilitate the access for their landlocked portion of the property. Just to be of note, the sale of this road in its entirety would not landlock any other parcels. They have access by other means to their parcels, so this does not impact them. But yes, it does split between properties running along those two roads with concession 14 NDR between the 20th Side Road and Mulock Roads. That is correct. But it was a recommendation to sell it its entirety, to keep it clean, simple, and avoid the disputes of different landowners buying different portions of the property and avoiding the resolution that the individuals have requested at this point in time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. That's all, Madam Mayor.
Thank you as well. Any further questions? Councillor Shea.
Thank you, Your Worship. Pardon me. So to the planner, the initial request from the proponents was to buy a portion of this land. You're now recommending that we put the whole piece of land on the market. Have you had any consultation with the initial proponents to indicate that they would be interested or willing in taking that on?
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship, the request was for the portion of land that has been identified as those roads between the concession 14 and DR between Mulock Side Road and the 20th Side Road. That was the request that was originally provided. The disposal bylaw would normally require everyone, obviously, that's adjoining and abutting that property would be notified. The reason for sale in its entirety was so that we didn't have multiple people vying to buy portions of the property, which again wouldn't resolve the issue for these individuals for their landlocked parcels access.
Okay, thank you. So just to be clear, the portion that you are proposing that we dispose of is in fact the portion that they had originally requested.
Based on the information in the file and the information provided to date, yes, sir, it is.
Okay, thank you. Can you tell me when we first discussed this, at what meeting, so that I can look up my my agenda and see the map?
I know it was November, through you, Madam Mayor, it was November of last year was the first time this was approached to council as a whole. The request was made January 17th, 2020 to Mr. Turner. Just trying to find the previous report, so bear with me, my apologies.
Certainly not a problem. And following the questions of Councillor Shea, I acknowledge Councillor Hutchinson.
And if I may, Madam Mayor, so there was minutes from a report that actually was prepared by the former clerk on May 5th of 2020.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything further, Councillor Shea?
No, thank you.
All right, then over to you, Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, just further comment on the trails one. I would hope that through our trails committee, once we get it up and running, that I would like to look at trails for what ATVs and snowmobilers, which will entail looking at some of our unopened road allowances. And we do have a bylaw for, I think it was the snowmobiles that was outdated from years gone by, but I don't believe we have any for snowmobile or ATVs. So it's something that we could look at, and I think it's important that we get a handle on where they are using West Grey property. That's just a comment. Thanks.
Thank you. Anything further, members of council, before I call the vote? Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. And just a question of clarity. When the lands are declared surplus, does that mean any landowner who abuts those lands would have the opportunity to bid on or make an offer on the lands? Is that how that works? That it's not necessarily guaranteed that the lands would be sold to the person requesting the lands. I'm just seeking that clarity. Thank you.
Certainly. Planner Spencer.
Thank you, and through you, your worship, that is correct. All of the abutting landowners will be notified, and there will be a bid process for the purchase of the property in its entirety, and then it will be at the discretion of council, the successful bidder, and that may be high or low. It's really the discretion of council how that bidding process may go if there's more than one bidder.
Great. Thank you for that clarity. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hutchinson, I see your electronic hand is up. Don't want to ignore it if there is a question. All right, thank you. Members of council, anything further? So on the motion, I'm going to have Clerk Scharbeck please read it again because there's been some discussion. So I want clarity for the vote. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, moved by Councillor Hutchinson and seconded by Councillor Shea. The council received the report, request for purchase of lands, Pelletier, and further, the council declare a portion of the lands along concession 14 between the 20th Side Road and New Lock Road. I think we should just clarify in there as surplus, and further that council directs staff to commence the municipal disposal of property process in accordance with bylaw 23-2008. And further that council supports staff's further recommendation that the lands be sold in their entirety for clarity, which is identified as those lands identified as the entire portion of concession 14 NDR between the 20th Side Road, NDR, and Mulock Road.
All right, all those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, all those opposed indicate with a raised hand. 2, 5 members of council voted in favor of this motion. 2 members of council voted in opposition. The motion is carried. All right. On to item 11.3, Director of Finance, Treasurer. 11.3.1, Grants to Organizations 2021. 3.1, yep, 11.3.1, Grants to Organizations 2021. And for the sake of repeating that, Clerk Sharbeck, could you please read the recommendation at hand?
Thank you, Mayor. Staff is looking for direction on the requests of the grants for 2021. So the recommendation would be a motion moving that they be addressed one way or another, whatever council's wish is for that motion.
So the motion would be, you're looking for a direct motion first, or are you looking for a motion on the floor?
Staff is seeking council direction on the request for the 2021 grants. So a member of council would need to move. I move that, followed by direction on the grants included in the director's report.
Thanks. It's very important that for clarity, not only for members of council, but for citizens listening in, when there's just a variation in terms of not having a direct recommendation on the motion at hand. So thank you for providing that for everyone. I see Councillor Townsend and then Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Townsend.
Yes, I do have a motion prepared if I may go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, I move that West Grey Council approve the disbursement of the 2021 grants to organizations budget in the following manner. And it was 1,000 to the Newstat Norman B. Carrick Agricultural Society as requested, 1,500 to the West Grey Soccer Club as requested, and the balance 13,500 to the Durham Hospital Foundation for specifically doctor recruitment, with payments to be made as soon as reasonably possible. And I'd like to comment once, and if there's a seconder.
Right. So I will just have Clerk Sharbeck read your motion, and I'll just confirm the language from you, and then I'll go for a seconder, and then I'll come to you first, Councillor Townsend, for comments, and then any other member of council that wishes to speak to this matter, this motion at hand. Clerk Sharbeck, when you're ready. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, I'll just check with you, Councillor Townsend. That West Grey Council approved disbursement of the 2021 grants as follows: $1,000 to the Newstead Norman B. Agricultural Society as requested, $1,500 to, sorry, what was the second one?
Soccer Club.
The West Grey Soccer Club, yes.
West Grey Soccer Club as requested, and the remaining $13,000 to the Durham Hospital Foundation specifically for doctor recruitment, and that funds be dispersed as soon as possible.
If I may, Madam Mayor?
Yes, we want your correct language, Councillor. Oh, first of all, Councillor Townsend, is that the correct language that you would like for your motion?
No, there are 2 adjustments I'd like to make.
Please go ahead.
The Agriculture Society is actually the Newstat Norman B. Carrick Agricultural Society. That's the name of the organization that requested the grant.
Okay, thank you.
And the other one was, it was 13,500 to the Durham Hospital, because that's the balance. The total is 16,000, I believe, from the director's report. Those are the only 2 corrections.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. I've got that.
Thank you. So I'll look for a seconder. Councillor Hamilton, are you seconding? Or yes, indicate with a seconder as Councillor Hamilton.
Pardon me, Mayor Robinson, I'm not seconding. I'm just recognizing that I think I have a pecuniary interest in that.
Okay.
We've been advised by an integrity commissioner, if we're paying members of an organization, we should refrain for making decisions about grants for those organizations. And so I'm sorry I didn't recognize this earlier, but I am now that I am a paying member of the Newstat Norman B. Carrick Agricultural Society. And so I should refrain from voting on that. If council wanted to consider piecing that piece out, I could participate in the remainder of the discussion. But for as it stands for now, I'll have to recuse myself. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's absolutely correct that as soon as you acknowledge or discover that you have a conflict of interest, that would be the appropriate time to declare. So that will be so noted in the minutes. And there's also a form, as you're aware, to fill out. At this point, I am still looking for a seconder on this. Councillor Hergert, a seconder. Now, is there any consideration to separating these out, or we could just deal with them as it is? Okay, that's how we will address it. Back to you, Councillor Townsend.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. The only comment I wanted to make is that if you look at the December 20th correspondence from the foundation, I know they talk about one doctor vacancy and they're approaching the ministry to go to an 8th doctor. Unfortunately, we had another doctor retire in June of 2020, which was, 21, which meant they now have 2 vacancies and they'll still seek the 3rd. And the reason they're seeking the 3rd, which makes it a total of 8 at the medical clinic, is that we have the population and the growth to support that according to Health Force Ontario. So that was the direction they were headed. So I think investing in the healthcare recruitment for those doctors is critical. And the situation that exists right now will not be permanent, and we do risk some other reductions in doctors allowed if there's no action taken. So I do believe it's a fairly critical situation that has a time limit. So anything we can do to help that would be worthwhile. And it also means that all 3 applications that went in get satisfied. The only difference is for the healthcare foundation, they don't get any further donations towards equipment. But I think at this point, our focus should be on the more critical, which is doctor recruitment. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of council, are there any further comments? Director Mighton, just on your report, is there anything you need to comment on before I call the vote? I'm just offering that opportunity. All right,
No,
fair enough.
I have no further comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Shea, then.
Thank you, Your Worship. Were we not in the process of revising our application process for organizations wishing to request grants, and what is the status of that, and why are we considering such a small number of organizations when in the past we've typically had a dozen or so?
Yes, council is, yes, thank you for the question, Councillor Shea. Staff is looking at drafting the policy. Over to you, Director Mighton.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. At the March 30th meeting, council had passed the motion to address them on a case-by-case basis. The policy that was drafted has yet to be brought back. There was several questions with it as far as the rigor involved in small requests versus large requests, and that has yet to be brought back.
Okay, so we will see that before budget time, I presume. And I would like to make a request that when that policy is finally developed, that requests from hospitals and health foundations be separated out. They seem to be of an entirely different nature than requests from ag societies and ball clubs. And I think they sort of skew the discussion. So I think this discussion we're having today is great, and I really support Councillor Townsend's motion. But I'm just making that request to staff going forward in the future. Thank you.
Well, that's also good, Councillor Shea, because as staff is developing this draft policy, that is something for consideration. So thank you for that. Members of council, is there anything further? And does anybody need the motion read again? Because I wasn't going to request that. All right, then. All those in favor of the motion at hand, please indicate with a raised hand. All right, 6 members of council have voted in favor. The motion is carried, and there was also a conflict of interest declared by Councillor Hamilton. And again, that would be so noted in the minutes. All right, we are now moving on to item number 12, that is questions. Members of council, in accordance with the West Grey procedural bylaw, members may request clarification or updates on previous agenda items. Is there anything at this point? Councillor Herger.
I do have a question. I'm hoping that that Mr. Cody Hewlett would be able to provide some updates on the playground equipment that has been updated and changed for the community, as well as I've had a question about bleachers in Ayton, which was a several years ago, maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, request from the Recreation Committee. So I'm just trying to see how those all fit together as we learn the updates of the playground.
Thank you. Supervisor Hewlett, are you able to respond? Playground equipment, Newstat in Ayton and bleachers in Ayton.
If I may, Mayor Robinson, I can respond in regards to the playground equipment. The bleachers was before my time, so I don't know much of the backstory on that. Okay. But playground equipment for Ayton and Newstead will be installed. Ayton will be early November, and Newstead will be the following week. So we should see it about the 2nd and 3rd week in November, roughly. Knock on wood, as long as install goes according to schedule.
Thank you.
May I continue on that real quick, please?
Sure.
Madam Mayor? Okay, Mr. Hewlett, is any of this new equipment accessible? I know that was a priority for the Ayton Recreation Committee. So is anything accessible?
There are accessible options in the playground, yes. Neither playground is fully accessible. However, accessibility is always kept in mind. So there will be accessible options in those playgrounds.
Thank you very much. I know the committee will appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had a question regarding the COVID-19 emergency status that I'm noticing others are exiting from that. Is the county or our West Grey Emergency Council considering terminating that, or the status quo remains for a while?
I will respond to that. At the county, it will continue in the state of emergency declaration, and that is often reviewed during our meetings, but it has been determined that that will continue. Also within the West Grey emergency plan, that is also the flow that we will continue with the state of emergency, but that is a constant review. I do recognize that there were at least 2 Bruce County municipalities that have terminated, but that is the status of Grey County and West Grey at this time. Anything further?
No, thank you.
You're welcome. Councillor Shea, please.
So in this section of the meeting, we're allowed to ask for clarification or updates on previous agenda items. So I'm going to ask for an update on an agenda item 2 items earlier on today's agenda, something that we just dealt with. And that's the unopened road allowance disposal. I received correspondence from the proponent that said that they had never requested to purchase that entire piece of property. They're attending this meeting, by the way, and they were only interested in purchasing the part of the property that aligned with the property that they own. So I don't know if it's appropriate to ask to reconsider. Clerk Sharbuck, I know there is a clause for reconsidering. If I had known that, and I did ask that question of the planner, I would have recommended that we only offer this to sell the portion that was requested.
All right, thank you for the question, Councillor Shea. I'm going right over to Clerk Sharbuck for the procedural response. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for that question, Councillor Shea. It's a good question. And just to make sure we have this exactly right, I'd like to go back to that initial request and the map. I don't have it before me now. I may be able to find it before the end of our meeting, but I would say that before we jump to declaring that surplus, that we'll have a look for that, hopefully by the end of the meeting.
Okay.
But we could reconsider the area to be declared surplus at the next meeting as well, if there's been an error. And certainly, I just I think we should look at the original request in the map because there was a lot of conversation about that. And the map was submitted with the request, with the highlighted area. And there was a conversation clarifying what was being requested. So perhaps if we could just put that on hold for a moment and we find that request, or if perhaps there's a change to that request, we could certainly reconsider at the next meeting as well. Would that be all right if we get that and get that request and a map clear before we put anything up for sale?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Thank you. And
Okay.
for everybody, so that we're very clear, this is dealing with 11.2.1, Peltier request for purchase of municipal lands. Is that correct, Councillor Shea?
Yes.
Thank you. All right,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Anything further? Councillor Townsend?
Councillor Shea reminds me, one of the requests that I would like to make of staff is when we get an agenda item that refers to past items discussed, and it's been a while since, that we do in fact get the appropriate and referenced materials rather than us trying to figure out what's there and et cetera and go looking for them, because not everything is still on the website from the past. So it's harder to do. So for example, the Saugeen Municipal Airport Agreement should have come last time. This one here, we could have got the other stuff. And rather than have staff be busy just before and us dealing with quite a few topics, this agenda was fairly light compared to some that we received. So if that could become almost a standard, I'd like to see staff do that and consider that as a process change. So we don't have these kind of things of having to go back and research and not know for sure exactly what's there.
So I'm going to suggest that that is a great suggestion for background history reports and mapping. I'll leave that to administration to address that and how that will look on our agendas, but it certainly is workable to have previous reports attached and reference material, which includes mapping. So I'll just leave that with Madam CAO and Clerk Scharback on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members of council, are there any other questions on item number 12? Very good. We're moving on to item 13, which is bylaws. First one, 13.1, bylaw 73-2021, Durham Community Center Concession Stand Lease Agreement. Clerk Scharback to the recommendation.
Through you, Mayor, the recommendation is that bylaw 73-2021, being a bylaw to approve and authorize the execution of a lease agreement for the Durham Community Center concession stand, be read a first, second, and third and final time.
Is there a mover for this motion? Deputy Mayor and seconder, Councillor Townsend. Any questions with regard to the motion at hand? Councillor Hutchinson, then Councillor Townsend.
Yeah, so a couple of points. I just wondered, in Schedule A on page 49 of the agenda, it has the lease agreement, has 2021. I'm not sure, are we talking 2021 or I guess it's 2021-22, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, so it says under not item 4, term, this agreement will be effective the first day of October 2021 to the fully completed on the 30th day of April 2021. I think we're going back in time instead of ahead in time, so maybe that should be 2022.
All right, Supervisor Hewlett, is this your bylaw or do I refer to Clerk Scharback? Just looking for clarity on the staff that will respond to this, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I can respond. Yes, Councillor Hutchinson, you are correct. That is just a typo. It should say 2022.
Okay. And further item under menu, I know this was a bone of contention for one of our councillors previous, but they suggest that operators shall not sell alcohol, near beer, or energy drinks, tobacco, cannabis. I agree with most of those except for energy drinks. I don't know why we would get into regulating that. That was something that one of our previous councillors was really against, energy drinks, but it's no worse than selling pop. So I don't know why we would start to get into, well, you can sell donuts, but you can't sell muffins. We don't need to go there, I don't think. So I would like to remove that wording of energy drinks, leave that up to the concession people. And item 9, I just had a question with equipment. It says all equipment fixtures required to provide the concession service must be supplied, installed, and maintained at the operator's sole cost. So I believe that we supply like fryers and grills and stuff like that. So I think maybe that needs to be some wording just attached to say other than what is provided. Because they don't supply all of their own equipment. I know Ayton's a little bit different than Durham in terms of the concession stand, based on the previous people that ran the concession booth. So should we clarify that? Maybe our Cody can clarify that.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. Supervisor Hewlett. Item 8, item 9.
Through you, Mayor Robinson, my understanding is that the equipment in that concession is supplied by the operator as well. I can confirm and we can have it amended if need be.
Okay. Yeah, like Ayton is different than Durham. I know that. So you might just want to clarify that. Maybe we just need to clean up the wording. But number 8, I would definitely like to see is remove energy drinks, unless we're going to get into regulating what we're selling, which the health department would like us to do. But I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you. So Clerk Scharbach, we've had a suggestion for removing energy drinks from the agreement at hand. Is that an amending motion and then it would be as amended? Just for clarity, and I'm not certain that this is what the councillor has asked or requested.
Through you, Mayor Robinson. Yes, that the main motion be amended by clarifying that energy drinks be removed, or the banning of selling energy drinks be removed from the lease, and that the bylaw be read a first, second, and third time as amended.
Councillor Hutchinson, are you fine with that language?
That's fine, I guess. And as far as the wording, maybe we don't need to worry about the wording of the equipment and whatnot. We'll just leave it up to Cody to check with that.
Clerk Scharbach, to that inquiry.
That would be correct.
Okay, is there a seconder then? I see, I'm looking for raised hands for moving and seconding. So Deputy Mayor is seconding that amendment. Any other questions with regard to the amendment? Over to you, Deputy Mayor, with your electronic hand up.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. It's just actually a follow-up on what Councillor Hutchison had asked regarding the date. Does that need to be part of the amendment, or is that just going to automatically be adjusted on the April 2022? That's just a question for clarity. Thank you.
Yes, Clerk Scharbach, that would also, how is that addressed in terms of on item number 4, changing the date from 2021 to 2022?
Through you, Mayor, I think that's just a typo that we can correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Hutchinson, was there anything further? You have your electronic hand up.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Councillor Townsend then.
Madam Mayor, I was just reminding you that I had it on the original, so I'll wait for that.
Okay, thank you.
No comments on the amending one.
No comments on the amending? All right, thank you. All right, to the amending motion, which is moved by Councillor Hutchinson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hutchinson. All those in favor, raise your hand. 6 members of council. All right, 6 members of council have voted in favor. The motion is carried. I do see that Councillor Hamilton has indicated she's in the waiting room. Supervisor Hewlett, could you please permit access to Councillor Hamilton into our meeting? And we will wait one moment.
If I may, Madam Mayor, this is Councillor Hergert. I was just having a few challenges with, like I got kicked off of the meeting and I got back in. So I was hopeful maybe I could just leave my video off unless I'm voting and then pop back in. Please and thank you.
Yes, and thank you very much for letting us know that. Very, very good. Welcome back, Councillor Hamilton, and thank you for that text because I was able to address that. So we are dealing with the main motion at hand on this bylaw. And Councillor Townsend, you have Councillor Hamilton, we dealt with the amendment to the motion. We're now dealing with the main motion. And at this point, Councillor Townsend has an inquiry or a comment.
Yes, I understand we do have a party that's interested. Can that be confirmed?
Supervisor Hewlett.
A party that's interested in the lease. Sorry, Councillor. Yes. It would be the Groves, who have typically operated the concession at the Durham Arena.
Excellent. Good news. I just wanted to make sure that that was actually happening. Thank you.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. I wasn't online to hear the amendment. May I please hear what was amended? Thank you.
Yes, of course. Clerk Sharbeck, could you address the amending motion before we call the vote on the main motion? And thank you, Councillor Hamilton, for seeking that clarity.
Through you, Mayor. Councillor Hamilton, I'm sorry you missed that. There was a motion to amend the bylaw by removing the portion of the lease that refers to prohibiting the sale of energy drinks. So the bylaw will be passed as amended. That was tidy up one typo will also be done.
On item number 4 from the year 2020 to 2022.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? So Clerk Sharbeck, could you read the main motion at hand, and then I'll call the vote.
Through you, the motion moved by Deputy Mayor Hutchinson and seconded by Councillor Townsend is that bylaw 73, 2021, being a bylaw to approve and authorize the execution of a lease agreement for the Durham Community Center concession stand, be read a first, second, and third and final time as amended.
Thank you. All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 7 members of council have voted in favor. The motion is carried. We are now moving on to 13.2, bylaw 74-2021, transfer payment agreement, COVID-19 resilience infrastructure stream. Clerk Sharbeck to the recommendation.
Through you, Mayor, the recommendation is that bylaw 74-2021, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter to this is incorrect on the agenda. Being a bylaw to authorize a transfer payment agreement with this is between, let me start again. That bylaw 74-2021, being a bylaw to authorize a transfer payment agreement between the municipality of West Grey and Her Majesty the Queen in right of Ontario as represented by the Minister of Infrastructure for the rehabilitation of West Grey Parks and Trails project be read a first, second, and third and final time.
Is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Hergert. Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Townsend. Questions? Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, I just wondered if we could have someone, maybe it's our Director of Finance or either our Cody, the Recreation Director, could clarify what this all entails. It says the rehabilitation of West Grey Parks and Trails. I'm just curious of what we applied for in there. What are we really looking at? And I think the funds were 80,000. Is that correct?
Over to you, Director Mighton.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. So this was addressing deficiencies that were identified in our parks or in our playgrounds, I should say. So it is addressing several different areas in Newstead and Ayton and Durham. And then we also were doing a bit of way signing, for trails on there, but it was just the signage. The total is, I think it's 100,000, I believe. Just pull up the agreement.
Thank you.
Okay. So will there be monetary allotments then given out in terms of, for example, trails to know how much that could be put towards signage?
There's about, I think we have about $5,000 that we were putting towards some signage. And we were also going to provide some in the trails within the conservation area park as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So we were putting signage in the conservation area? That's not our trails.
As a partner, we were trying to help assist them because we use those trails as part of the connecting trail system within the town. So that was an offer that we had made. If we were getting, a dozen signs up, we could add a few more so that they could enhance their signage so it would link with it and be consistent.
Okay. All right. So I'll look forward to further discussion on that. Thanks.
Councillor Herger, did I see your hand up?
I was just inquiring about the partnership as well. Thank you very much, Director Mighton. I might ask is this the Trails Committee that would be on for developing the signage then? Is that the thought?
Director Mighton, any response, or I may go to Madam CAO?
I'm not sure. Do we have a active Trails Committee?
Not at this point. Over to you, Madam CAO. Thank you, Director Mighton.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. And yes, we have yet to have the Trails Committee created. We are advertising for members, so hopefully soon. The design of the signage would be driven by staff. At this point, we do have our design guide. So, we'll just work through consistency with our branding, our logo, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Anything further? All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 7 members of council have voted in favor. The motion is carried. 13.3, bylaw 75-2021, zoning amendment, part lot 1, plan 55, part 2, RP 16R 5433, Township of Bentic, in brackets ZA 18.2021, the block, end of bracket. Recommendation, over to you, Clerk Scharbeck, please.
Through you, Mayor Robinson, the recommendation is that bylaw 75-2021, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 37-2006 for property known as Part Lot 1, Plan 55, Part 2, Registered Plan 16R 5433, Township of Bentic, to block, be read a first, second, and third and final time. However, through you, Mayor, there was a verbal recommendation during the public meeting that site plan control be added to this bylaw. So I'm wondering if council would like to include that in this motion, that in the enactment portion of the bylaw, that the lands be subject to site plan control be added, and the bylaw be adopted as amended, or just leave it as it is.
All right, I'll be looking for a mover on how that will be addressed. So Councillor Hamilton, could you clarify how you would like to move the motion?
The clerk read my mind, so thank you for that. Yes, I would like to amend it by adding the detail about site plan control, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hergert, seconds. Questions? Now, this was from our earlier public meeting of today. I'm not seeing any questions, so all those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 7 members of council have voted in favor. The motion is carried. 13.4, bylaw 76-2021, confirming the proceedings of council. Clerk Scharbeck to the recommendation, please.
Through you, Mayor, the recommendation is that bylaw 76-2021, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council, be read a first, second, and third and final time.
Is there a mover for this motion? Deputy Mayor, and a seconder? Councillor Shea. Any questions? All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 7 members of council have voted in favor. The motion is carried. Before I go to new business, Clerk Scharbeck, could you just please, for my records, I want to ensure that under 13.3, the bylaw that we just addressed, who was the seconder for that. I think I had Councillor Herger, but I just wanted to double check. It was moved by Councillor Hamilton.
It was moved by Councillor Hamilton and seconded by Councillor Hergert.
Thank you. That was just for my clarity. Needed to know that before I could move on in the meeting. Thank you. All right, so we're on to item 14, new business. 14.1, notice of motion, memorandum of understanding with West Grey Police Services. Councillor Hamilton is moving this notice of motion. Would you care to read it? And then I'll look for a seconder, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Robinson. And once it's on the floor, if I could speak to it as well. Thank you.
Indeed.
And so it reads, whereas the Municipality of West Grey and West Grey Police Services has a long-standing collaborative relationship of sharing services and resources, and whereas the development of a Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, which documents shared resources and services, is useful for succession planning. Therefore, be it resolved that West Grey municipal staff develop an MOU in coordination with West Grey Police Services, which outlines the agreed upon sharing of resources, including but not limited to municipal staff support, facility maintenance support, marketing and communications, legal services, and other services such as traffic control, bylaw enforcement, and training, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Townsend, over to you. Councillor Hamilton, you wanted to comment.
I think the motion says it all, but thank you. I just wanted to say the intention of this motion is just to create a legacy document. I was just reflecting on how if we have a change in leadership, whether it's council or board or CAO or chief or director of finance, the keepers of this information and this reciprocal, this amazing relationship and rapport we have between the services, it'd be great to capture that in a document that can be shared with staff as we move forward. So that's the intention of this this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions, members of council? Councillor Herger.
Thank you. I appreciate Councillor Hamilton's comments there. I think there is benefit in having these memorandum of understandings documented to the point of succession planning, transition of the keepers of the information, let's say. And I also believe that if I zoom out and don't think of just policing, I think that our staff provide a lot of information and resourcing to various committees and so on. So I don't want to think of this as an exclusive police initiative, but I do know that like our director, Mighton, she would sit on Elmwood Fire Board and looks after the financing as well as the bookwork for that. And so I think there are times when we get to budget and we see a number, but we also have to recognize the resources that staff are putting into these other committees and other boards and so on. So I'm more than happy to support this this resolution. And I'm just thinking, as you know, if we zoom out and don't just think of policing, that we would see these documents come forward for other committees and boards, or maybe one in whole for all of our committees and boards. So thank you to staff for being able to cross over paths and help us in other boards and committees as well. But I definitely see the value in this notice of motion. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Hamilton. Thank you, Councillor Hamilton, for bringing it forward too.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Maybe this goes along with what Councillor Hergert's saying, but do we have a memorandum of understanding with our fire department? West Grey Fire?
Madam CAO.
Through you, Madam Mayor. No, Councillor Hutchinson, we don't. The fire department is part of our corporate structure, where the others are arm's length, like the library board and the police board.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any further questions, members of council? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 2, 4, 5, 6. All those opposed? Oh, Councillor Shea, I'm wondering, has your screen frozen? Oh, okay. So I'm not certain. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand in favor. 2, 6, 7. 7 members of council have voted in favor. The motion is carried. Thank you. Just want clarity on vote. 14.2, notice of motion protocol for sharing information. There is a recommendation, Councillor Hamilton. This is your notice of motion. I'll look for a seconder after you read your motion, if you would be so kind, please.
Thank you. I'd also like to speak to it after too. Thank you. So whereas on August 3rd, 2021, the West Grey Police Services Board presented to Council amendments to the protocol for the sharing of information between the West Grey Police Services Board and the Council of the Municipality of West Grey. Therefore, be it resolved that the protocol be included on an upcoming Council agenda for Council's consideration to be ratified by bylaw at a subsequent Council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hergert, are you seconding? Oh, sorry. Yes. Sorry, I have to get out of my habit. Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Hamilton. You indicated you wish to speak on your motion.
Thank you. And just to say, as we know as council, when delegates come to us, we can only engage in questions of for information. We don't have the opportunity to discuss as council. And so this is just putting it back on our council agenda so that we can have the opportunity to discuss the protocol further. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further, members of council? Seeing none. All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 7 members of council have voted in favor. The motion is carried. 14.3, notice motion, Saugeen Municipal Airport Agreement. Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, you are the mover of this motion. Would you care to please read your motion?
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. And before I begin, I just want to say in the 3rd paragraph, I have a correction that I would like to record, is that it's not 300 acres, it's 253 acres. It was my mistake from gathering information, but I will correct that as I read it.
All right.
Whereas the Saugeen Municipal Airport is a shared asset between Brockton, Hanover, and West Grey, and has an agreement in place that requires a 2-year notice of leaving. Whereas the agreement does not have a clause that an exiting partner would have the option of reconsideration to stay on once notice is made. And whereas the Saugeen Municipal Airport is, again, 253 acres, with 2 runways, and it has an estimated value of $5 to $6 million, and that West Grey does own a 1/3 of this asset. Whereas any partner that provides 2 years' notice to exit the partnership walks away, it would not be entitled to any revenues from the sale of this asset if it was to ever be sold. And whereas some of the regional airports in our area, including Goderich, Stratford, Owen Sound, and Wyerton, are considering options to sell off their asset to the private sector, and the uncertainty if anyone in the private sector will purchase has created a unique opportunity for the Saugeen Municipal Airport for growth, SMA. Whereas the Saugeen Municipal Airport is fits under all 3 of our pillars in our strategic vision plan, examples being Pillar 1, listen and empower, and that we would provide a variety of opportunities for stakeholders to provide feedback online, in person, or in print, build relationships, explore new cost-sharing initiatives, leverage partnerships with neighboring municipalities, vibrant community that would invest in our infrastructures and would be responsible stewards of the tax dollars, and that we would develop funding strategies for long-term asset management and to promote our community. And whereas the Saugeen Municipal Airport is connected to our tourism, economic development, our agricultural sectors, disaster evacuation and recovery, OPP and rescue efforts, medevac flights, 24/7 plane and jet fueling, CAN-Pass for the U.S. pilots to land with pre-clearance, and several other key elements that benefits the 3 municipalities. Therefore, be it resolved that West Grey Council continues to support the Saugeen Municipal Airport, and further, that the public consultation process be undertaken by the Municipality of West Grey prior to Council considering any any decisions regarding the current Saugeen Municipal Airport agreement or regarding changes to support the Saugeen Municipal Airport. And I would ask for a recorded vote when we get there, Mayor Robinson, after we get a seconder.
Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Hutchinson, are you yes, Councillor Hutchinson is seconding. Now I'm looking, we'll remind Clerk Sharbeck that there will be a recorded vote that's been requested by the Deputy Mayor. Questions or comments with regard to this motion? Councillor Hergert and then Councillor Shea.
Thank you. I have a couple concerns about the motion. First off, our share is not exactly a 33.3%, 1/3. I'm curious about the valuation of $5 to $6 million. I was curious if that was based on an appraisal or where that part of the motion came from. One of our pillars is that we invest in infrastructure. This infrastructure is in Brockton. This infrastructure is not in West Grey. To be of note, there is a runway there that at some point will need to be reconditioned or repaved. And I'm curious what council's ability or want or political will to recondition infrastructure in a neighboring municipality for the tax benefit of a neighboring municipality. Promote our community, that was included as our pillar, and promote our community is West Grey. Economic development. When I sat on this commission, there was a push to make sure this was included in the Economic Development Committee's agenda, just making sure that the Saugeen Municipal Airport would hit an agenda item every month just to keep it top, front and center. We did have staff resource to assist with that. We had like a collaboration of OMAFRA come and do an economic development presentation at the airport approximately 2019, April of 2019. And since then, there haven't been the efforts that could have been if this was a viable asset. And I say that because OMAFRA presented opportunities to encourage economic development. There is no current business plan that I've read that shows a business model for this asset. One of the words in the motion Deputy Mayor had corrected was exiting, the word exiting instead of exciting, which I appreciate the correction there. I would put forward a competing motion at the appropriate time, Mayor Robinson. I also believe that there may be merit in staying, and I would look forward to the presentation from the Airport Commission to sway that decision. As we on council have seen for 3 years, now we've been in for 3 years, we should take stock of the partnership agreements, tripartite agreements that we are involved in to see the benefit and to also balance that with the needs of West Grey community, West Grey proper community. That doesn't mean leaving our partners out in the wind. There's a 2-year exit clause and strategy. That way it allows the commission to be able to be successful to carry on without West Grey's part in the airport. So I would be looking for forward to that presentation by the Saugeen Municipal Airport Commission to advise how this will be a viable business. Every year we have more money requested by the commission. We've had some issues, challenges over the last 3 years, even in documentation. Now we see that our partners are asking us to be more involved in the book work. We just talked about these agreements where staff are pulled in directions to help with different parts of our committees and boards. So there is a strain on resources when we invite staff to participate in these outside agreements, commissions, and boards. And I'm not sure that we have value in the number of meetings that are undertaken by the commission. That obviously may be for safety, it may be for other reasons, but the content of the minutes that I've read do not lead me to a very positive light that we've had all the information given to us, that we've had complete transparency from this group. They continue to ask for money and further resources. And I think that West Grey may have other needs. So when we talk about promoting our community, we haven't seen the overlap of airplanes landing at that airport, that we've not seen the tie to the economic development portion. We have seen planes with people from West Grey that land at the airport, but we also have a significant number of private airstrips within West Grey that people pay property tax on. So I would like us to consider this motion, but not consider this motion at this time. And that'll be all my comments for now. And I do have a competing motion when you're ready, Mayor.
Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Shea, and then Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thanks for this motion, Deputy Mayor. I think your instinct to engage the public in consultation is really strong and well-founded. I support that entirely. And your second, therefore, your first, therefore, be it resolved that West Grey Council continue to support the airport. Yes, of course, we would continue to support it while we're having a debate about. Everyone's frozen on my screen. Can you
Councillor
hear me?
Shea, everyone is active on the screen, so I believe it's your screen. Would you consider maybe going off screen, but still with the video? And you still have the mic.
Sure, you were able to hear me then. Okay.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes. So I introduced a motion recently to ask the Commission to do a presentation to us about why we wouldn't leave the arrangement. I think that's just us doing our due diligence and being very careful with the money that we spend, especially outside of the municipality on an ongoing basis. So I am looking forward to that presentation. I think we should also consult with the public, as you've recommended, Deputy Mayor. But you do raise the question of sales, and you indicate that many other local municipalities are trying to sell their airports. You indicated a market value price for this airport of $5 to $6 million. If you're not able to sell something, it doesn't really have a market value. But I guess the question I want to ask is, has there been any discussion at the Commission about possibly privatizing the airport, selling it, and having the municipalities get out of the airport business and have it perhaps more efficiently and more profitably run by a private entity? So that's my question to you, Deputy Mayor.
All right. Is that all your questions, Councillor Shea? And then I'll go over to the Deputy Mayor for the response.
Yes, I just want one further clarification.
Go ahead.
I did ask in a previous motion to have the Commission come and present to us. We have not triggered any sort of 2-year countdown. We have not made any decisions whatsoever to exit the agreement. We're just asking the Commission to give us a presentation. So I just want to make sure no one's too alarmed about that.
That is correct. We have not in any way considered or voting on exiting our partnership from the Saugeen Municipal Airport. It's the invitation to the chair and the executive to come out and speak to our council. All right, thank you. Deputy Mayor, there's some questions of clarity through Councillor Shea. Would you be prepared to respond?
Absolutely, Mayor Robinson. I just want to make sure that I'm going to capture them all. If I don't, Councillor Shea, I welcome you returning for follow-up on it. As far as the interest in selling, absolutely not. In fact, we have a couple of our other partners that said if you, West Grey, did want to exercise that right, they are in a position where they will gladly take on our portion and reap the benefits of that. As far as moving forward for discussion of other airports, there's been some, challenges in a couple of the other airports. As far as Goderich and Stratford, I'm not right up to speed on Stratford. I do know that Mayor John Grace of Goderich is very interested in looking at moving or considering looking at moving some assets, but he's very engaged with the agreement that we have in place at the Saugeen Municipal Airport with the three partners, three different town or communities involved in it. And that is actually the direction he's looking at right now. And he has engaged with other mayors and some other business people over there to take our model and apply it over in that area for the success. So I just wanted to make reference to that. If I could just real quick on the evaluation there. The evaluation is, I've talked to some realtors, and that's why I've left a spread of 5 to 6 million, just so you're well aware of where I come up with that number. So I hope I've answered all of Councillor Shea's questions, and if not, I will certainly answer any further ones.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we're moving over to Councillor Townsend, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. A question regarding ownership clarification. Schedule C of the agreement gives a calculation formula for how that gets calculated, and it was cost sharing, which usually has some implication. So I assume it has impact on the ownership percentage. But there is an allowance in the agreement for changing it as the world evolves. So I'm wondering, since this is the only number I have, has there been a recalculation since 2006? Because I know there's been lots of change in West Grey as far as usage, and I don't know if comparable elsewhere, therefore the percentage is fine. But if we're going to be using those kind of facts to make a decision, it's nice to know whether they're up to date and accurate. And so I'm asking for that reason only, that once I got the agreement, I was able to see that formula is there, and it does allow for periodic changes, from time to time. So that's why I wanted to know. So anything you can share with that, Deputy Mayor, would be appreciated.
Anything further, Deputy Mayor? And I want to go to Director Mighton afterwards. But I just want the clarity on the percentage and the third, if it's a third for with the 3 member municipalities. Anything further to a response, Deputy Mayor, at this time?
Yeah, I could have. We've actually had this discussion. Just so we are working on the agreement, that is getting done. For the 3 or all 3 partners have acknowledged that it's a third. That formula for shared it's very, I would say it's kind of complex. I don't know how they arrived at it. It was done years ago, and that's just that's how they arrived at our portion of what we contribute. And I think if there was distance, there was a few other factors that were involved in it. And maybe Director may be able to speak further on that, but that's as much as I know about that portion of it. The third asset is actually, that's very clear, because the old agreement you may have before you may have Aaron Ellerslie in there with that exit. That's what we're working on now, is getting that updated. Thank you.
Director Mighton, please.
Yes, for consolidation purposes in our financial statements, it's 27% is the share of the airport.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Townsend, is there anything further? Okay. And I will ask if there's any other member of council. I'll go to Councillor Hamilton, but I just want to let everyone know, Councillor Hergert, you've had your 5 minutes. And I'm just looking at our procedural bylaw, which is 17.6, speaking to a question. And so you've had your 5 minutes. So I'll now move over to Councillor Hamilton. Thank you. Please proceed, Councillor Hamilton.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Robinson, and thank you, Deputy Mayor, for your motion today. And certainly it resonates well with me that, yes, we do continue to support our Saugeen Municipal Airport. No decision making has been made, but a conversation has started. And also, absolutely, public consultation, of course. That's really important to all of us here at Council. So I appreciate you bringing this motion forward just to reaffirm that. I think that's important. I just have one clarifying question for Deputy, if he might. Could you just let Council know, or I would like to know, what's the balance of membership on the Saugeen Commission at this time in terms of Council reps versus community reps? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, and I got to be careful because I may be using up my 5 minutes here. So there is a rep from each municipality, myself obviously. Hanover has 1 council member, and the chair, who is also the rep of Brockton, is the deputy over there. We have 4 members of the general public that are on the commission. one being a retired business owner, a couple of pilots, one is a pilot in training, and then we have a recording secretary, and of course our manager. They are not on the commission, but they participate in the meeting. That would make up your commission. I hope that's answered your question. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions. Deputy Mayor, did you want to speak to this item?
I think that, thank you very much, Mayor Robinson. I think the notice of motion has, it pretty much speaks what we're trying to do here. I think the notice of motion from a couple of weeks ago, it created some uncertainty, and the way it was felt was that we were moving forward with an exit strategy, and that's why I kind of brought this forward. Is I think, you know, we need to engage, the commission needs to engage with council and the general public. I'd like to see an educational, which is I'm working on, an educational public consultation, so that we can, the general public, the stakeholders, as well as council, will have a clear understanding. And that's not just in West Grey, that's the three partners. Have a clear understanding what the value of the asset is. Also, on top of that, as far as the question regarding business plan, that is something that I've spearheaded, and we've got some other things before us, but I'm planning on working with that with another one of the commissioner and making a subcommittee, or at least getting the ball rolling. As far as the agreement, we're working on that. So I think a lot of the unclarity on where the airport or the commission is, I think we're addressing a lot of the issues. We do have a restaurant in there now that's very successful. As a matter of fact, last week I think we had just alone on Thursday 40 planes coming in. So they are coming to this area. Our fuel sales are up, and I think there's a lot of benefit. And we are, I will say one thing, with the uncertainty of our surrounding neighboring airports, we are getting a lot of calls on new hangar development, which is fantastic. So the asset, it may not be in West Grey, but it's certainly, we are part of that asset. We've been contributing to it for a long time, and it is our asset as well. Thank you, and I look to you for your support on this. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do note that there's a recorded vote. Councillor Hergert, what is your question?
Yes, so I had mentioned during my 5 minutes that I would like to put forward a competing motion, and that motion would be a motion to defer until after we have the presentation from the Saugeen Municipal Airport Commission. And I would move that.
Is there a seconder for the deferral? Councillor Townsend. So Clerk Scharbeck, I'm looking for a recorded vote on this. So I'll turn it over to you at this time for the motion to defer on this, the notice of motion that was before us.
Okay. Pardon me, Mayor Robinson and Clerk. I believe it's to be deferred until a specific time or date. And to that, I was curious what date and time the Saugeen Municipal Airport Commission would be coming, and that would be my date that I would put in there.
So the previous motion was dealing with the November timeframe for the commission to come out. Is that correct, Clerk Scharbeck?
Through you, Mayor. That's a good question, Councillor Herger. And it is important when we defer things that we don't lose sight of them altogether. And we don't have that delegation or that presentation from the airport booked. There hasn't been a specific date set, but I'm wondering if you would be agreeable to that this notice of motion regarding the Saugeen Municipal Airport Agreement be deferred until such time as Council has received the presentation from the Saugeen Municipal Airport Executive.
I think that may be fine. I guess just housekeeping, I guess. Have we reached out to the commission to ask for a delegation and we just haven't got that booked exactly yet? Is that where we're at?
That's where we're at. We have not booked anything yet.
But we have already reached out to them to say that council would like a delegation.
They are aware that that resolution was passed, but I haven't had an in-person conversation.
Okay.
or about sorting through the dates of our upcoming meetings.
Okay, so I am agreeable to stating, as the clerk mentioned, just until after we have had that presentation.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend, are you fine as a seconder with the wording? All right. So over to you, Clerk Scharbeck, for the recorded vote.
Okay, so the motion is that the notice of motion regarding the Saugeen Municipal Airport Agreement be deferred until such time as council has had an opportunity to receive the presentation from the Saugeen Airport Commission Executive. And Mayor Robinson called for a recorded vote. Mayor Robinson, how do you vote?
Not in favor.
Councillor Shea?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson?
Not in favor.
Councillor Hergert?
Councillor Hergert, yes.
Councillor Hutchinson?
Not in favor at this time.
Councillor Hamilton?
A yes.
And that motion is carried.
Okay, then we are now moving on to, are there any other notices of motion at this time? I'm just asking the question. All right, then I am moving on to item 15. And that is announcements. Members of council, are there any announcements? Councillor Hergert.
Yes, this week is Fire Prevention Week, and so everybody should check your smoke alarms and your carbon monoxide alarms as well. And thank you to the fire departments, both of them.
Are there any other announcements? Councillor Hutchinson.
Maybe not so much announcements. Maybe I should ask this earlier, but I'm just wondering if we could have an update on the Main Street construction in Durham, maybe from our director. I know we're doing detours and the whole bit. Is there anything that we need to update the public on in terms of this? I've seen the announcement on Facebook. I'm not sure if everybody got that, but I don't believe it was in our local papers. At least I haven't seen it yet. So
okay,
maybe just do an update.
Sure, that would have been a question under item 12. However, I will take it as an announcement because we have a road closure and we've got some exciting construction taking place. In a nutshell or very brief, Director Shawinski, can you respond?
Absolutely, Your Worship. Essentially, the Garefrax box culvert project is underway. The project is expected to last about approximately 4 weeks. And essentially, we've got our detours up on our website and so forth and posted accordingly. And we are working through the challenges and so forth with respect to those detours. They just got set up. So we're working with the public on that as well as with the police. And that's about it.
Good. Okay. Anything further for announcements? Councillor Hutchinson?
No, it's fine. Thank you.
Any other member of council on announcements? Okay. We have a closed session, which is item 16. We, according to our resolutions, we are to adjourn our meeting at 1 p.m. unless there is a motion that's approved by council to go to 1:30. I'm only doing this food for thought because we're about to go into item 16. Don't know for the amount of time. I'm not looking at a 5-10 minute discussion perhaps. How do you wish to deal with that if you do wish to deal with it? Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was actually going to note that myself and put a motion forward that we do go beyond curfew to 1:30 if required.
If required.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Townsend, for moving that. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hergert. Members of council, any questions? All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 7 members of council voted in favor of that. That motion is carried. Okay. Item 16, closed session. There's a recommendation. Clerk Scharbeck, please.
Through Mayor, the recommendation is that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey does now go into a closed session at 12:34 p.m. with the CAO, clerk, manager of planning and development, and the director of finance treasurer, and legislative coordinator as well. I'll add to that motion for the purpose of addressing personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees, proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, and a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board.
Is there a mover for this motion?
Point of personal
Go right
preference?
ahead.
No, I forget the word. I'm sorry. Might
Point of
we,
order?
before we vote on this recommendation, have a 5-minute break, just a quick little break before we go into closed session, Mayor Robinson? Or clerk, I'm
Clerk
sorry.
Sharbach?
We do have it moved and seconded, so we can't walk out in the middle of that. But if we vote, we could then take a recess before we convene in closed session. Would that be all right?
Yes.
Actually, Clerk Sharbach, we do not have a mover and seconder yet. You just read the, so.
I thought Councillor Townsend moved it. Oh,
No.
no, it was to go past curfew. Never mind.
Right.
Sorry, this is a good time, Councillor Hamilton. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to, I was anticipating you say it was a good time, Clerk Sharbach. So, all right, let's take a 5-minute break. We'll come back and we'll have the clerk read the motion again for clarity and a mover and seconder. So how about we come back at 1:45? How's that? That will give people a reasonable amount of time. Okay, audio and video off. Thank you very much. See you in a minute or two.
Do we have a closed session agenda, anyone? Do we?
It's in your email, Doug, dated.
Must have missed it.
That's okay. Let me see. Dated September 29.
29. What? Don't seem to have. What's the heading on it? Does it have a heading?
I'll forward it to you.
One moment, we're just waiting on our clerk and CAO. I acknowledge you're all back sharply. Thank you very much. Just be a moment.
Oh, actually, I see it. I see it. Bad, thanks. I got it. No, that's not it. Beth, maybe I will get you to send it to me. That wasn't the right one. Can you forward me that agenda?
I just did.
Yeah, okay. Anybody else? I'm still not getting it. Beth, you sent me the one with a bunch of the calendar, a bunch of agendas, but I don't see the closed session.
I can also try and forward that, Counselor. I do have a question procedurally. I still am noting that this says that it's live on YouTube.
So we're not, Councillor Herger, please wait. I'm calling the meeting back to order. And we have our clerk present and our CAO present, and we have the members of council. And we're ready to deal with item 16, which is the closed session. Clerk Scharbeck, could you please read the motion at hand? Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, the recommendation is that Council of the Municipality of West Grey does now go into a closed session at 12:50 p.m. with the CAO, Clerk, Manager of Planning and Development, the Director of Finance Treasurer, and Legislative Coordinator for the purpose of addressing personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees, proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, and position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board.
Is there a mover for this motion to go in camera? Councillor Hamilton, is there a seconder? Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, any questions on the motion? See none, all those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 7 members of council have voted in favor. This motion is carried. We will now proceed in camera.